Jesus Christ. Pick the bloodiest picture of Ellie possible.
I had to go with the blood. But we're live, guys, okay? We've already started.
Okay.
We're going to be doing a review of The Last of Us Part 2. Myself, Canadian Basement, I beat the game. If you want to check out the playthrough, it's on the channel. But I also have Heather and Gina, both who have beat the game. Heather's on her second playthrough of it.
Yep.
What's going on, guys?
Nothing much.
All right. Well, before we talk about The Last of Us Part 2, I want to talk a bit about The Last of Us Part 1, because that game for me was top tier perfection.
Yep.
It executed on all fronts, and it's universally loved by everybody. Even though I know some people, I mean, D Moon had trouble getting through it. I think he got to where Bill is.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and then I think that's where he gave up on the game. But I could see
that
like
was a really fucking hard part.
Well, I also think it's because that's kind of where the second part of the story takes off, and I don't know. I can see someone dropping off partway through that game if they find the story not as interesting as others do. But I thought it was fucking amazing. I do want to know too, guys, that in the chat, because I can't hear it myself, is the audio okay? Because there's some audio playing in the background music, and I don't want it to overpower anybody that's speaking. So let us know on that one. But Heather, where'd you land on review-wise? If you had to grade The Last of Us 1 out of 10, what do you think you'd give that game?
The first one? I would probably go with an 8 for that one, just because the story was so compelling and it just made you want more with how it ended.
All right, Gina, where you land?
I mean, I'd say probably like an 8.5 to an 8.7 on the first one. Just there was a little bit of time in the Last of Us while the story was so amazing. There was a little bit of a lag kind of in between, right around in that build part. It was just a little bit of a lag, and at that point in time, like, you really didn't know too much about Ellie. It wasn't until you started getting to know more about Ellie that the story started really becoming compelling, because then you had Joel and you knew his past, and then Ellie started coming into the picture. But there was a little bit of a lag. So, but otherwise, fucking phenomenal game.
Now, like, I mean, I've played so many games over my time, but I mean, that game, like, at the time I played it too, it looked better than any other game currently on the market. And now, when you guys played it, this was years after it had come out. That game now is like 7 years old. But when I played it, not only like did it's the combination of story and innovation graphically. The only drawback for me landed on its gameplay. At times, it was a bit repetitive, but I still put that game up there. Like I'm pretty sure I'd give it somewhere between a 9 and a 9.5 out of 10. It's as close to for me as you can get to perfection.
And I was just
Yeah.
I'm sorry. Go ahead.
No, go ahead.
Sorry. I was just gonna say I might up mine to a 9 thinking about it, just for that giraffe scene alone, because considering when the game came out, that giraffe scene was ridiculous for what I've seen now, let alone 7 years ago.
Yeah, there's a lot of nuance in that game too. Like, I mean, I love anything that's going to be as intricate so you can replay it and see it in a different light. I played through it once and once and a half, but I've also seen a couple of people play through it on YouTube, and it's great. It hits all its marks, and I mean, it's a bit more of a linear story than this next one, but we'll get into that. So what we're gonna do. We're going to just sit here and we're going to go through the game as we went through. But we got 3 different perspectives of 3 people that have played the game very differently, on different difficulties and in different settings. Like I live streamed, and live streaming is different than sitting at home and playing in terms of how much attention you can pay to things. But I think either Heather or Gina, you guys have the list brought up of how... I mean, I also have some of the game being played on the YouTube channel, so we could look there for some hints.
Yep. Chapter 1, we start out in Jackson. So that's where, with the prologue and where we have to follow Tommy on the horse.
It's also where we get the story of Joel basically kidnapping Ellie out of the Firefly establishment.
Yep.
See, I'm looking back at it now, and I love the way this game began. In all honesty, because they replay it, and like you can see like, he's like, well, he's like, what did you do? And he's like, I saved her, and then it just flashes to like a bunch of dead bodies.
Yeah.
Like he looks at it that way, where like anybody else would look at it and say, "You fucking killed like 100 people to get out of the
Right.
fucking hospital." I mean, the one thing that always concerned me with the game was the obvious thing should have been to like ask her what she wanted to do, but I realized the Fireflies didn't want to risk that, so they're gonna operate no matter what.
Well,
But
and not only that, but it's not like Joel gave her or could give her the option either, because by the time that he got to her, she was already sedated.
Yep.
yeah, well, that's the thing. They took the option away. So the Fireflies aren't good people either. I mean, nobody's really a good person in the fucking world of Last of Us, whether it's the first one or the second one.
Apocalyptic dream.
But I do like where they kind of picked up where it left off. If they're going to do a sequel, they'd have to do that in my mind. And I think I'll get to that a bit more with how this game kind of jumps around. All right, what do we got? Like, I mean, yeah, we know he goes in there, he rescues her, and then he goes and visits her, and they do, like it's on screen right now. He basically gives her that guitar that he'd say he always would teach her how to play.
Yeah.
Now, this is like, I mean, the beginning of the game. I think a lot of people might have gripes with the fact that there was like such a because he didn't tell Ellie what exactly happened. There was like a huge disjoint between the two.
Yeah, I mean, definitely. Because I can't remember. Did he actually tell Ellie what happened in the first scene, or does that happen
That
later?
happens on in the game.
Okay, that's what I thought, because like you could tell Ellie, she had this like pent up aggression because she didn't understand, you know, especially when they show like her waking up and she's like, what happened, and he says, well, they had other, you know, whatever, other people, and they didn't need you, and you could just see like the confusion
It wasn't
in
even
her face.
It wasn't even just that. He sat there and said that the vaccine wasn't going to work. So.
Right, so you could see like the confusion in her eyes. So that basically sets up like everything that happens between Ellie and Joel in the game coming forward. It's so ridiculous.
I'm gonna say The Last of Us, the first one. Like, I mean, what I got from the last scene, at least, when she looks at him and he like, she knows he's not telling the truth. She knows it, but like, I mean, if he's willing to not tell her, there's got to be a good reason behind it, and she just goes with it. I think eventually it just like eats away at her, because at this point in time, what we're seeing is not that far after. Like, I mean, I believe that some of the interactions that they had, because you know how we get the flashbacks later, I believe some of those interactions kind of have already happened in this scene, but I'm not too sure if that's true or not.
Not in the first scene. It's not until after, when we meet up with Jesse, that they start talking about there being a rift between Ellie and Joel.
And I also think it's because like Joel kind of looks at the relationship they have different than she does. In all honesty, I mean, he looks at it like another daughter, and she looks at it similar but not the exact same.
Well, in this first chapter, the dissension between Joel and Ellie is very evident. Like when the scene with the waking up scene, when Jesse comes, you know, and then I know basically you brought up Jesse, but he comes and you find out that what happened between her and Dina, so that kind of adds to the fact that she's like the storyline that she's a lesbian, which I have no problem with. But then they also start talking about Joel, and there's obvious problems between her and Joel. So it sets up the game so perfectly for what goes next.
Yeah, I mean, I don't want to. I guess like when we do the review, it's probably best if we don't get too hung up. It's going to be a bit of a sloppy review. I don't think we should like hammer out each point as it happened, just because it will be here all night. Right. But I do agree with like when we need to deep dive, we'll deep dive into what we're talking about. So yeah, like I mean, I think like okay, so at the beginning of the game, it reestablishes their relationship for the most part, and then you kind of get less and less Joel as time goes on. It reestablishes their connection and the poignant moment of him singing that song to her that she continues to play throughout the game, which is. I wish I was when I like. There's some games I love to stream, but this one was one I would have loved to have also played by myself, just because of the things that you miss. But yeah,
I mean, just even playing through it myself. I mean, you know, I'm kind of a beginner, and yeah, I got through The Last of Us, but part 2, I was still kind of at the beginning stage, and I had it turned on. I think it was, I don't know, I was on like not the easiest one, but the second easiest one.
Yeah, it was very light.
Yeah, I had it on light, but even with that, there's so much stuff that I missed. I know I missed.
Well, I'm also going to say,
I can't even imagine like streaming it.
One huge pro in this, one really good thing this game did right was the difficulty levels and the ability to switch as the situation demanded it. I don't like having to go into a menu to do it because it kind of takes you out of the immersion, but I would say there's times in this game where it would have benefited me probably to switch to light off of moderate, which I played the game through, and also times I'd say I'd probably switch to hard, because as time goes on, like a linear difficulty, like having the same difficulty throughout the whole game, doesn't benefit the game.
Right.
If that makes sense. I mean, it depends on how you want to play it, but if you want a challenge, you kind of have to moderate the situation to go either hard or moderate or go down to light, depending on how stuck you are. But they give the player a chance to do that, just so that they don't get hung up on one area and get too frustrated to continue.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, there were quite a few times in this game that I did have to switch down to very light, but for the most part I was playing on light. But I love that option. You know, just having it there is...
It definitely makes it a better way to play the game when you can switch it from just the pause menu. Because you get into those areas where it's just like, how the fuck am I going to get through this shit? And then it's like, oh, I know how.
Yeah, right.
Now, Savage, I would say if you haven't played the game, you might want to come back to this afterwards, because on screen is going to be a ton of spoilers. This is going to be a spoiler fest. So if you don't care about spoilers, that's up to you. But we're not going to shy away from them, because you can't. It's almost impossible to talk about the game without spoiling it. Bobbit, yeah, I know you want to give your thoughts. I'm just wondering. I'd add you to the call, but if you turn into a robot, I don't know, man. So if you can. And you turn into a robot, then we might have to drop you. But it's up to you. But yeah, okay. So this is the moment in the game too when there's fucking bigot sandwiches that fucking kind of shoe. This is like the first taste, I guess, you get of them. It's not like agenda driven, but they kind of are. They've moved this microscope a bit closer to focus on sexuality. That's a theme in the game. But we'll talk about that afterwards. But they kind of, like, in the first game, and I think this is why I liked it so much, Ellie was gay, but it didn't matter at all. And I guess it would make more sense to focus on it now that she's older and going to be sexual instead of just a kid.
But you know,
they're not too bad with it, though.
No. And you know what the crazy part is? It's like, I don't know, maybe it was just because it was my first game that I played, and I wasn't really focused so much on that as to not dying, but I really didn't pick up on the fact that Ellie was gay until toward the end of the first game,
because it didn't matter at all for the story, right?
Exactly.
And I think that's why I still will always prefer the first game, and I think it has more to do with the fact that there's so much like identity politics and sexuality conversation happening in the world that it sucks when you just want to escape from it being thrown at you to go somewhere and have it being there as well. I get they have to be like poignant for the times, but I don't know. They're not too bad with it, is all I'm gonna say.
Yeah, the way they did it with this game is it's not overly like she's out there saying I'm fucking gay, fucking deal with it. It's just them being normal people.
Yeah. Exactly. You know, I had absolutely no problem with the fact that Ellie was gay in the second one, because even though there was the kissing scene between her and Dina and stuff like that doesn't bother me. They're just normal people, like you said, Heather, and they didn't. It's not like they hammered it home every 5 seconds or anything like that. It was just who she was.
And the thing is too, like, I mean, in order for some things to play out in the storyline, they had to have that relationship evolve. Whether it was gay or not, it didn't really matter whether if someone was going to be gay or not. And I think that's the thing people should just take away from it. But yeah, you guys are right. They don't like beat you over the head with it. It's not like she's breaking the fourth wall, looking at the camera and being like, "I'm gay, by the way." You know, like they do lean into it a bit more than I would probably like, but for the most part, they're really good. So yeah, that scene happens, and then we end up cutting over to this absolute monster. We get the first look at Abby, who is like a main character, and I mean, I mean, we could talk about the backlash and stuff later, because I don't want to get too into that before we just get into discussions of how this game is. But you get introduced to this character, and there's a lot to unpack with the character in general. But the game needs to have new characters. Like, I mean, this is like, I know a lot of people complained about, oh, they bring in this character. Why can't it just be Joel and Ellie? If you wanted Joel and Ellie, play the first one again. Right? That's a whole game unto itself. So, like, I mean, if you want more of it, and I get it, because the dynamic was so good, it would be nice to have a bit more of it. But you can't just... You're not making the game. So it's just either play it and like it, or play it and don't. But don't bitch and moan about things that games have to do. Or stories have to do.
I'm going to say it, like, Abby's character was so genius, because there were parts in the game where, like, you were kind of like, okay, who's this, you know, right now. Then there's parts where you fucking just absolutely hate her, but then there's parts when you understand her too. So there's so many different dynamics to the character itself, and I think that people get caught up too much on what happens in the storyline, and they don't focus on her actual character.
Well, I hear a lot of people too complaining more about how the game is like, oh, they do this, that they want you to get you, they want you to like the character, they want you to do this. Of course they do. Have you ever read a book or movie, watched a movie or TV show where they're not actively trying to get you to feel a certain way about a character? Otherwise, what the fuck? It's just gonna be a blank page. Like, the point is to create a character, and there's certain notes that they hit to create a character to gear people to think a certain way about them so that they can write the rest of the story.
And it's not just that. I mean, if you really think that the people that Joel killed didn't have somebody that was going to want revenge on him for what he did, they don't know storytelling.
Exactly. Yeah. That's the whole point of every movie, or just life in general. Like, if somebody hurts your loved one, you can't just go around killing people and expecting them to have nobody that loves them. You know what I'm saying? So, like, the fact that people were lashing out so badly on that character just...
I mean, there's just another aspect to that, and it's the way the world is now, with everybody fucking freaking out about everything. Instead of actually...
they were attacking the person that played her, for fuck's sake.
Well, I mean, the game had a score of like 2 out of 10 before the game was even released. So that's just, you know, that's just another form of hate being bred by people that aren't even going to give a chance to play it.
Right.
But yeah, we get to this part where, you know, unfortunately, Joel gets beaten into a bag of dicks.
This was the hardest fucking part of the game for me. I was so angry, dude. Like, so fucking angry.
Which, that's good storytelling, because that's what they wanted you to do. They wanted you to feel that anger so that you would want to go and continue on with Ellie and try to find this bitch and try and fucking kill her.
Now, this is, I think, where our perspectives of playing the games and how we played the games is a bit different. Because you guys played The Last of Us, and then played The Last of Us 2. Right? Like, quickly in succession. So everything that happened in The Last of Us Part 1's fresh in your mind. Where I think a lot of the fan base were outraged by this came to a point where they wanted I needed actually a bit more time with these two characters before just to get more emotionally invested in this scene. I get why they do it because I feel like this whole game is just kind of shit happens. Like, I mean, if a loved one dies, you're always gonna sit there and say, "I needed more time with them. I needed more of this with them." But with this specifically, just to kind of like, I guess, get people back on board with what they loved about those two characters so much, I think they needed a bit more time with them. Not a lot more, but a bit more. But we can get into that later. I mean, it's still like the point itself is still fucking. It's just completely brutal.
Well, and I think that was what outraged a lot of people anyway. Except I can't speak for anybody else, but for me, the way that she killed him was what made it so difficult. Because like if she would have just shot him, I'd have been like, no, and then that's over. But she beat him to a pulp, as we're seeing, you know, in the scene, and with a golf club, and she was like torturing him.
Yeah, well, I mean, she tortured him beforehand, but she was also like, this is like I think what a lot of people don't get about the character of Abby too. Like she like her fucking, and you find out this as the game goes along. Her whole purpose for being is fucking revenge. I mean, she trains herself into a fucking tank, so that she knows she's about to go and fight a full like a grown man. So she's not willing to have like a physical disadvantage if shit gets ugly. So I mean, like everything she does kind of puts her in that position to be on equal playing ground when she gets face to face. But as soon as like they encounter him and they get back to like a place where she's safe with the rest of her team, she just blows his fucking kneecap off with no hesitation. Like she had come to the point so far that there was no reason even talking to him. He had to die immediately.
Yeah, well, that and Owen steps in, and Owen's like, you know, was it Owen or was it Manny? I can't remember which one. That was
Owen
like, you have to end this.
Owen stepped in because Owen was. He seems like a guy that's like He was invested, but he also saw, I guess, what that did to somebody, and they end up having like moments later that kind of spell that out. But yeah, I mean, after that, that's where the game kind of just. That's where you have a clear idea of where the game is going, or a clearer idea of where the game's going, and they end up going on a mission of vengeance. And you end up going there with Dina, and this was the one thing I actually enjoyed, and I thought the game would do more. The first area that you hit with Dina is like open. It's almost open world, but it's enclosed a little bit, so you get more exploration, and there's no specific direction. So you get this big wide open area, and you can go to different places and loot different things and pick up the notes and build the like side storylines and stuff like that. But this is the only time we see this in the game. The rest of it's like very linear.
Yeah.
So I'm kind of surprised that they only had that one section that's like that.
Yeah, and I loved how like they from the very first chapter, all the new characters, whether it be Abby, Owen, I can't remember the girl's name, any of those characters, even Manny, you know, all of these characters that they add to them. So like as the progression of the game goes, when you see them again, you know exactly who they are, and you know that they were there with Abby when it happened. So it makes you want to hate those characters too.
Despite Mel being pregnant and all that.
Exactly.
Fucking
Mel,
Steve Buscemi. But yeah, like I mean, the game like it does a pretty good job of not like it leads you, but it doesn't hold your hand. It doesn't treat you like you have no brain. It kind of like you can go out here and you might miss things, but the things you miss usually you can live without, and it does basically teach you to loot as much as you can or look around as much as you can to survive. But I like the fact that it's not too hand-holdy with its gameplay.
Yeah.
Well, and like you said, basement, right off the bat, it teaches you that you have to hold, or you have to look over.
Yes.
What?
We just come back to life. I don't know if we're alive or not.
I really hope we weren't.
I think we're live now. I don't know. Yeah. Okay. So the unfortunately the video and shit had to restart. My internet went out, so fuck everything. Ah, my God, man. I feel like it's happened more and more now in the summer. Or since, like, COVID-19. Because everyone's home jacking off to fucking pornos. But anyways, I don't know. I can't even remember where we were before we stopped.
We were talking about the um, final scene in chapter 1, but then Heather and I, right when you dropped off, we were talking about when the horse blew up.
Yeah.
And I asked if that scared the shit out of anybody else.
Oh yeah, I shit my pants. I'm not gonna lie. I fucking exploded a dookie all over my underlooms.
Well, I mean, you're traveling along and it's going so smoothly. You know, all you hear is like horse galloping, and then all of a sudden, just boom! Like, what the fuck?
Gina's telling one of her fucking jokes again, and it's just like, oh Jesus Christ! And shut boom! And it's like, good God.
Yeah. I mean, I actually wanted Gina to die more than the horse. At least the horse is useful. Fuck.
I am 100% behind that.
Shimmer. Anyways, Shimmer gets double tapped in the head. Yeah, he comes. The guy shoots the horse in the head after that, and then they take you down and they start to interrogate you, essentially.
It was one of the guys that was there in Jackson killing Joel.
Yeah, the guy that you cut his face up with.
The switch.
Yeah, with a switchblade. So he's down there. Okay, so yeah, I guess we don't have to like recap the game so much, especially now with the internet. If it goes out again, I'm gonna fucking shoot myself. Right? But yeah, that ends up happening. Dina saves your life, and from there it kind of moves forward. But I did see something pretty interesting online, and it's like one of these small things that Naughty Dog does so well is things that they do that they don't even expect anybody to see. Or if they see it, it just adds that much more to the story. And The Last of Us Part 1 did this too. But there's times throughout the beginning of the game where Dina just like cradles her stomach or grabs her stomach, kind of hinting towards the fact that she is pregnant. I don't recall seeing it myself, but maybe I just played it off as them needing to do something with their hands.
I started seeing it more when she was getting sick.
Yeah.
That's when I started really seeing it. But another thing that I absolutely love with Naughty Dog is just the other small intricacies that they add to the game. Like, for instance, in chapter 1, when after Joel dies, Ellie goes back to the house and she gets Joel's watch. And we remember the significance of the watch from The Last of Us Part 1.
Yep.
Yeah, that was a great scene. I mean, certain things like that I'll pick up on, but like the weird off the screen stuff. I mean, even Last of Us Part 1, where she takes the toy off the shelf if you're like not looking at her, or when she takes the magazine stuff from Bill when you're not looking. Apparently, it's just like they make the AI go through the motions off screen.
Yeah.
So it's that kind of stuff that adds to how they build and construct a world with intricacies they don't care if you pick up on or not, but it just makes it that much more rich when you do.
Yeah. It just adds to the environment.
Yeah. Exactly. Or she grabs Joel's guitar. And as we know later on in the story, the guitar comes up a couple of different times in the story later on. It's like her connection with Joel.
Well, that's huge symbolism during the game, because the whole thing about the first one when he was going to teach her how to play guitar, and he ends up doing it, and she ends up learning, but that's almost like the link between her and him that she's got left while she travels. I mean, I'm not against the guitar scenes or anything. It's just I always picture that guy coming out of the forest with the fucking acoustic guitar. But I mean, it's served a good purpose for like a visual and audio reminder of her not being able to let go of that relationship with him, and they build on that as time goes on. But I think shortly after this, I know you get into like a skirmish in the sewers or something like that, because I remember being down below ground, and this is your first look at one of the new zombie types, which is the what are they called?
Shamblers.
Yeah.
That's in the tunnels, isn't
it?
It's the train station / sewer scenes. It's like you go through the sewers in order to get to the train stations.
Right.
Yeah, so they give you like a bit of platforming there, and the one thing, I mean, I've seen complaints about like the not their version of zombies or the infected, because a lot of people say, oh, it's very similar to the first game. It's like, yeah, but they're trying to build a logical way that this would progress, so they can't just start introducing like fucking 10,000 different types.
Right.
It's like it does it in stages, like an infection. So and I have a feeling those shamblers are probably like like a point of the infection between clickers and bloaters, because it seems similar
Yes.
Yeah.
between those two, or they might even be past bloaters. I'm not sure.
Yeah, and what I loved about this game is yes, they're like a zombie, but they don't take the typical zombie approach. Like The Walking Dead, where they look like they're just rotting humans. This one is different. It's a fungus infection, correct?
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean,
Yeah.
they did wonders by basing it off of something that exists in the real world. So it's just applying it to humans, where it's only in like the insect kingdom, from my understanding.
Mhm. Yeah, and I love the fact that, like you said, Basement, you can see it in stages, because like you see the infected that are still human, but then they turn into the clickers, into the shamblers, and eventually to the bloaters.
But they also use the stages so well as like a gameplay mechanic, because you have like the first infected, which are basically still mostly human, and they can visually see you, and then everything else past that is blind. So it's kind of like when you enter a room and it's one or two guys that can see you, coupled with the guys that are blind that react to sound. Though you have two different threats. They like the threat of the clickers, which is like instant death, but also the threat of the guys that can see you, so you have to stealth your way around. They kind of use them in tandem to make different, I guess, shooting segments or those gameplay moments a bit more diverse.
You forgot one there, Gina. It was also the stalkers.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah, stalkers were the other
the
ones.
stalkers?
They're similar to clickers, but they like shy away.
They
Okay,
can
yep.
somehow. I think that what it is with the stages, I think it's the beginning infection, which is the runners. Then you have the stalkers, and then they become clickers. Then they become shamblers, and then they become bloaters.
Yeah, because that makes sense too. Because like the clickers are so super aggressive compared to the other ones.
Well, the other ones kind of, it seems like they still have a bit of sight, so they like creep around like that, but they're slowly turning into just mindless fucking murderers. But yeah, I mean that's the segment there, and it fast forwards. Then you end up going into the theater with Dina, and from there, kind of like you end up getting your own taste of being on your own in the world. Then that's where the game, like, I mean, this game fucking kills it with like intensity, and it's a combination of moments and music, and just like pants shitting fucking enemies that kill you immediately.
Yeah. And music on top of that is just like, oh fuck, something's gonna happen before it happens. So it's like it ramps you up before that.
Well, and I think like the theater scene was right around when I stopped watching the lives because I was playing myself, so I didn't want to be spoiled. So everything that came after that was literally shitting my pants. Not literally, but figuratively.
Well, I'm gonna tell you, even with watching him play on the streams and playing myself, I'm still shitting my pants.
Yeah, they're really masterful at getting the intensity that they want. And this is where we end up meeting the new type of enemy that they introduced, which is the dogs. It's cool because they didn't just throw in another type of enemy; they make them their own type of thing. Where just like any dog, they would track by scent, and it adds it so much more difficulty with human enemies.
Yeah, because with the dogs, you can't stealth your way around.
Right.
And you have no hope of kind of like shooting your way through, in my opinion. At least not in my playthrough. I didn't have enough material to do so.
Okay, wait. And this is when we literally hit the dogs, right?
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. Well, that's what I figured. For me, the only way that I could make it through scenes like that was to use the flaming arrows and like go shoot the dog, because it would I hate saying this, but it would blow up the dog and the owner. So it would take out like the dog and the person standing next to it as well. So then you would eliminate two at one time. But otherwise, if you tried to just like shoot the dog, then by the time that you shot the dog that was attacking you, then the owner would kill you.
Yeah.
And this is where I had my stumbling block for the main one I had in the game, because I no matter what, I was trying to stealth my way through because I didn't want to completely deplete my ammo reserves or anything like that. But I also didn't want to just I guess I hadn't really prepared myself properly for like the stealth mechanics. You guys were probably in a much better position from playing the first one recently. I've kind of forgot how the game played.
It certainly helps doing all that. Plus, I also went back to the first one and played that Left Behind chapter as well, so that prepared me even more.
Yeah. One thing that I have to say is, like, even in scenes where you have no choice but to kind of deplete your weapons, they were very quick to, and I know that this changes as like the difficulty level goes up, but they were very quick to allow you to replenish your weapons after. Like, if you're playing on light, possibly even moderate, especially very light, then you were able to get your weapons back relatively pretty quickly.
I'm gonna say even on moderate, like they never kind of leave you without. If the cut, or not the cutscene, but the gameplay portion forces you to use everything you have, very quickly afterwards will they give you a time where you can kind of recollect yourself. But most of the times I played, like while I was playing the game, most of those scenarios I ran into, I did end up exhausting most of what I had.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, me too. I mean, I was just before we started to stream here with my second playthrough. I had one bullet left. And I'm up to the part where Abby just got back to Lev and Yara, so.
See, I really didn't have a problem with, like, my weapons going empty until I hit... It was further on in the game, and I don't know what this monster was, but you guys remember where it was, like, all of them in one monster? Like, there was a bunch of...
Oh, yeah, that happens a bit... Yeah, that happens a bit later with that thing. But yeah, that was a tough one.
Yeah, that's when I was like, what the fuck am I supposed to use? Because I have like one bullet.
But yeah, getting okay, so we eventually meet up with Jesse, and they have a segment that I think reminded most people of fucking what's the game, Uncharted. It's like you end up getting in that truck and you go through an Uncharted scene, but it was intense and it was fun. And it was good to see Jesse back in the game, because I was hoping that they didn't just like write his character to be in the very beginning and that's it.
Right.
Now it's weird too because the no, you go ahead. I'm gonna change the topic. So.
Oh, I'm sorry. I was just gonna say, in that scene especially, one thing that I was very grateful for was the fact that they had the lock aim option, because like for somebody like me who's a fresh new player, shooting can be quite difficult. And yeah, I know you could say, oh, you're cheating if you have that on. Whatever, fuck you. Like, it helped me, because otherwise I would have been dead like 50,000 times in that scene. I really enjoyed the lock aim option.
The game is very accessible, which I think is great, because it doesn't single out people that might not be big gamers or anything like that. It basically wants anybody that wants to play the game to be able to play the game.
Yeah, and that's what I loved about it, because like I didn't play a whole lot of games before this, because I couldn't keep up with it. Like I tried my best, but there was never a game that, aside from The Last of Us, that allowed somebody like me who's a newbie coming in to be able to not only enjoy the game or play the game, but enjoy playing the game and not get frustrated. So, but anyways, I'm sorry, I know I went off topic.
No, but I mean, that's a good point. And I mean, that also leads to one of the positives of the game being so accessible for anybody to play. Now, like, yeah, with the scene that follows the whole interaction with Jesse in the car, is actually, like, this is the moment I thought the game was going to go in a different direction, because when you get back, it seems like Gina is more happy to see fucking Jesse than she is to see Ellie when they return back to the theater. I don't know if I was the only one that thought that, but that's what I got from that.
I kind of felt the same way, because as soon as she saw him, she was just like, "Oh my god, you're here!" It's like, okay.
Yeah, and then
Baby daddy.
on top of that, like, obviously he doesn't know that she's pregnant when he first comes back, but as soon as he finds out, you can literally sit there and you can watch those two kind of being brought closer together, and you see Ellie kind of as the outsider again. And I don't know if anybody else felt this way, but just from Ellie's expressions,
You could tell.
you could see that because like Ellie's biggest fear is being alone, right?
Well, that's
So
one
you
of the
could
first
tell.
things she says to Gina later on is, I don't want to lose you.
Right, like her biggest fear is to be alone. So like you can see the fear in her eyes. So that scene alone is just so powerful for anybody that's actually paying attention.
The greatest thing too with the capabilities they got graphically in this game, emotion comes across so clearly. Like it's weird because for a long time there, like animated characters there was that uncanny valley where they looked like weird anytime they tried to emote anything, like inhuman, disgusting. So
Now I will say there is one part of the game where Ellie is playing the guitar and she smiles, and it's super fucking creepy looking.
yeah, they're not exactly there, but they're really close with how good the game looks,
Right.
like facially. But yeah, I can't remember. Is this the first time we get like a flashback with her? I think it is when she goes back to being with Joel for her birthday, right?
Yeah, with the astronaut thing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
In the museum.
Now, the flashbacks, in my opinion, are some of the best parts of this game.
They are.
And I think that's what a lot of people got angry about when they killed Joel immediately. It's like, we're not going to get any of their segments. But if you add up the flashbacks that they have together, you do end up getting another couple hours out of their relationship. It's just used as anybody would when you lose someone like significantly close to you. You're going to get those moments where you go back and you think. But it's, for me, whether they told it in chronological order or not, I think in the end this works better than chronologically doing it, because it's a reminder of why she continues to kill people, basically.
And it's also more realistic because you don't always remember everything in chronological order. Sometimes it takes a situation to happen for you to remember something.
Yeah, but I mean, I guess what I was trying to say is that instead of us getting a flashback, having that happen before Joel dies, I think this has more weight. Going back to it after the act is already done than having it happen beforehand.
Well, and it just kind of proves exactly what kind of an impact that Joel actually had on her life, because you don't see flashbacks of her life prior to meeting Joel. All of her flashbacks are with Joel, and it's things that happen along the way of her journey that make her flash back to those times.
But I mean, this is also the time, I guess, when it seems like every time that she goes out and gets into like an altercation with one of the WLF people, she returns as like a checkpoint kind of deal to the theater. And every time, like, I feel like that's when those flashbacks usually happen. And it's a good reminder to keep the storyline on track. It's a good reminder for the game player to be like, this is why this is happening. Like, I mean, even if you don't need it, it really assists with it. And I'd say this flashback above any of the other ones, except for the one at the very end of the game, is by far the best. One of the best parts in this whole game, going to the museum.
It shows
I'm
exactly.
a fucking dinosaur!
Oh my god! And then you get to climb the T-Rex too. Like, dude, Basement missed out on that one.
I know. I can't believe I didn't climb the T-Rex. What
Yeah.
the fuck?
Oh my god, that was the best. Like, Heather had mentioned it or whatever, but you didn't, I didn't see at least what she said. So I'm climbing the dinosaur, and all of a sudden, I bought a motherfucking dinosaur. Fucking died. That's just one of those like little tidbits that they add into the game that.
It just reminds you she's a child.
She's a child, right? And that's another thing about that scene that is so magical, because not only do you see how much she means to Joel, like she's literally become his daughter, but you see the fact of like her age, because the first game, like the whole game, it was like they were like she had no choice but to act older than what she was, and that scene just reminds you that she was only 13 at that time.
13, 14, around there.
Yeah.
I mean, like I love this the scene in its entirety up until the end of it because it gave us exactly what the first game gave us to an extent, but even more of like the fun-loving nature of a kid, and I guess how far Joel had come too because he was like an asshole for a lot of the first game, but it also kind of highlights one of this game's weaknesses for me, and that's that type of interaction, just the walk and talk type of deal, isn't as good in this game with its core cast of characters as it was with Joel. Like Dina and Ellie, they have their moments, but it's not. It just doesn't. It's not where it needs to be.
Yeah, it was very lacking in the conversation parts.
And that's a big hit for me too because the whole like a lot of the storyline is built on the crux of the relationship between Dina and Ellie, and that was key. That time should have been key to kind of build us into believing the relationship more than it just being they're in a relationship, just accept it.
Well, and not only that, but there's never really a relationship established because like they start out as it's just a kiss, and then all of a sudden Dina does admit that she has feelings for Ellie, but they never fully establish the actual relationship until later on in the game. So, and I think that if they would have added a little bit more talking, like you guys were saying, then they could have not only established that relationship, but built upon that relationship. I guess it's also where it would make sense for them to end up where they did.
I guess it's also the quality of the talking. They do talking, but it almost seems like the kind of talking you'd have before you're even in a relationship. And then the game, unfortunately, does eventually jump to a point where they're living together. And it's like, you never... It misses out on the connection that needs to be had there for us to kind of be super invested in that. But that's one of the things, I guess, that was a bit of a negative. But yeah, I mean, we got the flashback with the astronaut scene, which in my opinion was where the naughty dog in The Last of Us kills it. With those emotional scenes, they're usually better done than TV shows and movies that tried to do it but can't.
Well, in that scene alone, you see, I mean, obviously we know that Joel is willing to go to the extent of the earth for her because of what he did in, the end of The Last of Us Part 1. But this is another part where they show exactly how much he is willing to do for her because he finds that tape of the moon land or the rocket ship taking off, and God knows where he had to go, to get that.
Yeah, something so simple would probably be extremely difficult to find. The whole setup was like, holy shit, man. Though he's done terrible things, he would have been fucking grade A father. And it was good for him to be able to experience that a little bit before he got fucking clubbed into infinity.
Yeah.
But the space scene, yeah, and I agree with you, QC. The space scene, the whole museum was stellar. It was where this game shined almost... That was where the game shined the most, I'm almost wanting to say, but it's not just there. But we get back from that, and I mean, I love how like she picks up the guitar to play. I think she picks up the guitar to play, and that's where she flashbacks. It like makes that link between the symbolism of the guitar and her link with Joel.
Yeah.
Now this is where my memory eludes me because I can't remember exactly what happens when we get back.
Let's see. Okay, so the birthday gift, we that's when we head into chapter 3, Seattle Day 2. Correct?
Is this where we tried to hunt down, I can't remember her name.
Nora,
I think
this
so.
Is where we run into the Seraphites, and it leads to the hospital scene with Nora.
Yeah.
So this is like, I also like the idea that they had, it's, Ellie is kind of like this outlier to a storyline that's already taking place between two warring factions. But she kind of comes in and disrupts fucking everything because she's a murderous psychopath.
I'm sorry, it's not that we go find Nora, we're looking for Leah. We have to go to the TV station.
Oh, TV station, yeah, okay. So, I mean, this is also, I guess, the first time we kind of get introduced to the Seraphites as like an organization. Yep. I will say this with the Seraphites. I was interested by them a lot. I wish there was a bit more than there ended up being with them, for me. But that's just me.
The Seraphites, I don't think that they really got into that until later on in the story. And then I think, like, once we hit Len and his sister, that's when it kind of got a little bit more. But I agree that they needed more.
Yeah, they do build out from it, but they also use certain, like, those characters. They're very important to the storyline, and unfortunately, the only thing we see is what we get from them. I mean, I think the game doesn't need more length, but I think I might cut out certain things to add certain things. But we can get to that when we actually discuss everything. So yeah, we go to the TV station, and from there on out, I don't think, like, outside of the fact that she's already dead, I don't know exactly if there's anything of importance that happens there.
That's when we figure out that there are cults that are just sick as fuck because of the hanging pole. But that's pretty, and we also find out that Leah's dead already, and with the pictures of everybody else.
Right, and we also, isn't this where we lead to another flashback? Because isn't this where they go to the St. Mary's Hospital? Like, she ends up in the hospital.
Well, I mean, it's okay if we skip some of this stuff because we're going to be talking about the game for the next fucking 2 hours if we continue, I guess, the way we're going. So, I mean, the main points for the most part, I guess we can try to hit on those because I don't want to do an entire recap. It's hard not to because there's so much in this game to fucking unpack. But, yeah, so, I mean, I think at one point in time we do, like, when does it happen where we do actually run into the Seraphites properly? Like, she gets shot with an arrow and they're whistling to each other?
She's going on her way to the hospital to find Nora.
Okay, so yeah, I mean...
So that's in chapter 3, correct?
Is it in chapter 3?
I believe so, Seattle Day 2. Because, well, according to this thing that I have...
chapter 3, but Seattle Day 2. That makes sense.
Yes.
Yeah,
so confusing how they
says
fucking
Hillcrest,
set this up.
Finding Strings, which was when she played Joel, and then the Seraphites, and then the St. Mary's Hospital.
So yeah, we end up going to the hospital, and I mean, I like when you end up meeting Nora, that interaction was great. Mm-hmm. But this is where it's kind of like... I mean, I'd love to replay it just to get the different perspectives because eventually you're on the other side and you kind of see how these characters are. But I mean, Nora just fucking super bitches.
Oh fuck yeah! I hate Nora.
But if you remember, Nora was also the same girl that, when in the end scene in Last of Us, which I think they showed at the beginning of Last of Us 2, but I'm not quite sure. But she was also the one that was arguing with the Fireflies to try to find a way to keep Ellie alive.
Are you sure that was Nora? Because I thought that was actually...
It was the dark lady with the...
Oh, that was Marlene. Right? That was Marlene.
Oh, I'm sorry. My bad.
But yeah, see, okay, so like, I mean, her interaction with Ellie at least was like great because she's playing it off like, you know, this and this, and then she just gives you another reason to continue fucking murdering. The game kind of needs to remind you that, because okay, if it was just Joel dying and none of these interactions kind of happened, they need this to continue so that the vengeance that the player wants keeps the front and center of the storyline. But yeah, that was a good interaction, and that leads to another one of the best cutscenes in the game, in my opinion. But
which is
when they come, okay, so when Ellie comes back after, they don't show you exactly what she does to Nora in the basement when she's about to die, but it couldn't be good. Right. She ends up getting her to talk, and she comes back and she's got like the first big signs that she's gonna have PTSD.
Well, not only that, but didn't Nora get bit too?
Well, she went into the spores, so she was infected.
Oh, that's what it was. Yes.
But the difference was she's like, I can make it quick, or you can sit here and slowly turn into a monster.
Yep, I remember what you're talking about now.
And then went back to
That
the
was a really good fight.
well, that was a good scene, but it was also followed by one of the better scenes in the game where she goes back and her hands are shaking, and she's still like, this is where they are showing on the map, and then Gina ends up like taking off her top, and her body's like completely fucked.
Yeah.
Like it gets to show you that, like, I mean, this is things you like you play Uncharted and you're fucking rolling around, falling down mountains and shit, but it finally shows you that like the toll of what she's doing is taking, and it, like, her physical toll and mental toll is completely fucked her already, and you're not even like anywhere close to what your end goal is.
Right.
Yeah, it's insane how badly beat up she was. She was still able to walk out of there.
And I agree. I mean, with what the QC is saying, I agree, because yeah, she's gone. Ellie's gone and killed a bunch of people. But that was that one scene. Like, I mean, you remember with the torture scene with Joel in the first one, where he just fucking goes like it's just a switch that he turns on, and I think he goes back to the bad guy he was 20 years ago, or within that 20-year span. Where Ellie doesn't really have that. She's never had it. So this is like that moment where she kind of bursts that bubble of having to not only just shoot somebody, but to have to work them over. Yeah, you gotta torture somebody for the most part.
And Ellie pulls on that a couple of different times in the game, where like she pulls on something that Joel used to do or that Tommy used to do, in order to get people to talk. But I think that by her doing what she did in the scene with Nora, it lays out exactly how vengeful she actually is, like how important it is to her to avenge Joel's death.
I mean, the other thing too is Joel is technically her father figure, so she kind of looks up to what he's done as, like, you know, that's the bar that I'm willing to get to, that I like, or to, you know, I'm willing to do terrible things for the cause that I have ingrained in my mind. So her torturing someone, it's her mental ability to do it. She's willing to do it, but the toll is so great, and I don't think anybody that's ever done anything really terrible doesn't realize the mental toll until the act is already finished.
Yeah, the QC just said almost something very similar. He said that combined with the fact that Ellie is still having an internal battle of why she's going through with this anyway, it messed her up.
Yeah, I mean, her loyalty to Joel is unwavering, and that's the thing. That's why it's so great, because Joel is technically, because Joel is her father figure, and because she realized what he did, the terrible shit that this man has done, and at that point in time, she kind of, I guess, like, you know, if I mean this much to him and he did this much for me, he meant that much to me. What am I willing to go through for him? And the game really hits that home.
Yeah, and I think, like, walking through the game, going through step by step, and you see like the progression that Ellie has. You know, when she first starts out, she's really pissed at Joel. She doesn't understand why he did what he did. And then as time goes on, I think you can kind of see in her character that she starts to understand more and more why he did the shit that he did.
Well, I mean, one of the game's main themes too is it's hammered home a lot in this game of violence and vengeance is unforgiving. Like, it's not like, I mean, most games, look, you fucking play most games and they just give you run in, you kill 1 trillion people and nobody bats an eye. It's like nothing. This game kind of wanted to focus on it, and they did multiple things to accomplish that. They gave you had to kill dogs. They humanized the enemy, not only by giving you both sides, but also by giving the enemies names and having them call out to each other as, oh my god, they killed fucking, what was his name, Carlos. So, like, every other fucking enemy was named Carlos, but still.
Dave. There was a lot of Daves.
But still, I get, like, the limitations on voice acting, but it was a small detail that did help, but had diminishing returns over time, because you do end up killing a fucking hell of a lot of people.
Yeah.
But yeah, we get through that point.
The next point I think is when she makes her way to the through the flooded city to get to the aquarium. Correct?
I can't remember. Is that what
Well, it's okay.
the
I
guide
got it
saying?
pulled up. Heather, go ahead.
She, uh, that's when we get the second cutscene of finding the guitar strings for.
Okay, this scene was the weakest, I guess, for me of the flashbacks, up until the end, obviously. But it's because it starts with Tommy, and he's like teaching her how to shoot, right? And the game fucked me or glitched or something because I get like it was like he's right there by the cow or whatever, and the guy was like standing fucking 50 meters away. But whatever. I mean, the scene itself is just goes to give you another tidbit to build towards her and Joel's interaction post the end of the last game, where there's that always those questions that she has, right? And I mean that's where you get to. You end up with the bloater fight, and I thought it was a genius idea to have the bloater grab her and Joel step in to save her again. And then you go and you find the people that had died that had tried to run away a long time ago, and they end up turning. But that's where she asked the question of what exactly happened, right?
Yeah, exactly.
Like I've never seen another infected before, or that's like hasn't turned. And he's like, oh, that's because they hide it like you do or something. I can't remember the exact wording.
Yeah, well, he basically said exactly that. Like they hide it, and you could tell right there that she was beginning to not believe what he was saying.
I mean, I always think to a point she didn't believe it anyway. But at this point in time, her questioning kind of gave him an opportunity to come clean, and he didn't. And I think that was the right time for him to do so, but he didn't.
Right. I think like they did like a masterful job, in my opinion, with like nailing the fact that she was a teenager throughout the entire first one, but also with the second one too. Like you can see her growing up as it went on. Because when it first started out, you had that first scene with like where she was all pissy at Joel and all this stuff, and she's throwing this fit. But then as time goes on, you can literally see her grow up. I personally enjoyed that because I'm a teenager myself. So just those little fits that she would throw, or when you saw the flashback, those little attitude that she would have, they fucking nailed it.
Yeah. Sorry, go ahead.
And then after that flashback, we go into the flooded mall to steal the boat with Jesse.
Yep.
Yeah, this is a part in the game that I have. This had a lot of like gameplay elements to it, right? Not a lot of cutscenes in this part, at least from what I recall.
Straightforward. Right. Yeah, it's straightforward. You enter the mall with Jesse, and then it starts off with a cutscene where Jesse and Ellie hear them talking about a sniper at a marina, and Jesse's like, well, that's Tommy. And Ellie's like, doesn't necessarily mean it, man. That's what the separate way is. And that's when you have to stealth and kill your way through this mall to steal the boat.
Right, because Jesse wanted to go to where Tommy was, and Ellie wanted to go where Abby was.
Yeah, well, that's another example of her being clouded by her thoughts of, once I do this, it'll be good, this nightmare can fucking end. But, like, I mean, to throw away, like, a companion or friend because of it is where she, like, starts to really become a much more of, like, a villain in the game, even though you're playing as her. And it kind of comes to light later on in the game. But we won't, like, waste too much time on the combat aspect of it. Where do you end up after that's done?
You then have to... You're going through the river that is now Seattle's downtown area, and you have to end up sniping your way through some seraphites.
Yeah, I mean, we don't have to, like, the gameplay stuff, I mean...
There, you then, there you're clear to go through to the aquarium.
You end up at the aquarium, and this is where you end up killing fucking Alice the dog.
Yeah.
And
we have to kill so many dogs in this game. That was
but
one
you
down.
get to that point, like Alice, you get to that point when it was just another fucking dog. Like you get desensitized to killing these things.
But you know what though? There's a dog. I'm not sure if it's at this point in time or if it's another point in time. But there is a dog named Bear that 90% of people kill. But apparently, you don't have to kill that dog.
Like, did the dog shy away from you or something, or?
Apparently, it's like more friendly. Like if you remember.
You throw a ball for the dog, right? At some point in time. Yeah.
Yes, when you're playing as Abby, that's Bear, and he's friendly. So apparently he just wants to play. So when you come upon him with Ellie, most people kill the dog because you think it's like one of the fucking Cujo dogs that you have to kill. But apparently you don't have to kill that one.
I don't even know if I came across him or if I killed him. Like during this point in time in the game, it's like, this is why I say, like, they try their best to, like, humanize the enemies, but eventually, because you killed so many, it's just another thing to fucking in your way that you need to get rid of. So Alice goes down, and after playing that, and that's why it's so genius for them to use dogs, because everybody loves it. People would rather see someone die than a dog die.
Oh. And the fucked up part is, in this game, you get to pet the dogs and play with the dogs, but at the same time you have to fucking kill the dog.
Yeah, it's they do a pretty good job of trying to show both sides, and kind of in the end you just don't feel great. But you end up killing Alice. You move forward, and you encounter both Owen and Steve Buscemi. And they're arguing.
Otherwise known as Mel.
they're arguing about going after Abby, who had left for the island, right?
Yes.
Okay. So that and then you just fucking you try to. The thing is, she tries so hard in this game to be Joel, and it doesn't work out.
No.
Like, she's doing her best to imitate and her father. Basically, I'm gonna say, but I think, like, as the time goes on, she realizes how much of a toll that takes on you, and that makes the ending of the first one so much more. It means so much more, because she's like, I lost everything too, and you didn't just lose everything, but she lost people that were close to her, but didn't lose her humanity along the way. Where Joel completely lost that shit.
But I think that, like, Joel's daughter dying was what sent him over the edge, and in the second game, Joel dying is what sends Ellie over the edge. Because he was that person for her.
Yeah. And that's why it pays homage to the first game really well. A lot of the, like, steps are very close to how the first game kind of rolls out. You can pinpoint things like the trap. You know how Bill had the traps. You get to a point in this game where the traps are set with Gina, and you can kind of link together the story beats a little bit. But they do a lot to establish the fact that in order to be someone like Joel, you have to give up a lot.
Yeah. Well, and not only that, but with the traps, with Bill, I think, if I remember, is it the Seraphites that set the mine traps?
No,
it
was the WLF, yeah.
Okay. Sorry. But after this, I think we start playing as Abby, right?
Yeah, well, no, close, but she ends up killing fucking pregnant woman and right. Owen. But it was more like self-defense. Like, I mean, it sounds that
was not self-defense.
Okay, she went there to get them to talk, to find Abby, and they fought back. And at that point in time, what are you gonna do?
Yeah, and like with Mel, I think after what happens with Mel, when you see her, and then Owen, comes in and he says Gina, or who was it? It wasn't Owen. Owen was dead already, I think. Somebody came in and said she was pregnant.
Owen says she's pregnant while he's dying.
That's it.
Then
That's it.
she kills, she's already killed Mel, so she's just dying there. And then
Right,
Tommy
and then you
shows
kind
up.
of see her like go kind of on the floor in almost like a child's pose, to where she realizes exactly what she did. She just killed a woman and her baby.
Meanwhile, she's got Gina back home.
Exactly.
It does its job really well to show you that she's become a monster. And she can't deal with the fact that she's become a monster. And I think this is where like her character kind of comes to the conclusion that I'm okay with leaving this alone now. It's caused way more damage to me than anything. And I think Tommy and them like start plotting a trip back to Jackson, right?
Tommy
Yeah.
and they started plotting it, and she came out. She asked, so they just get away with it? And Tommy was like, they got what they deserved.
Yeah, I mean, you could still tell she has that need, and it's like, I mean, it's like that idea of how far would you go to do something, and then once you've gone so far, even if you still haven't accomplished it, is there any turning back, like past the point of no return?
Well, and I think that drives home the fact for her, the whole mission was not about hurting them or anything. The whole mission for her is Abby. Like, she doesn't care how many of them she has to kill. She wants Abby.
Now, she does approach a lot of situations where she didn't want to kill them. Right? But
Right.
she yearns so hard to be Joel. Even with that, you're going to point on the map where she is, and then you're going to follow up. If she's following how Joel did it, then she was definitely going to kill at least one of them, if not both of them, because that's what he did. In that
Right.
exact same scene in The Last of Us 1, he gave the same option to two like random bad guys, and he ended up killing them both anyway.
Yeah.
And so did Tommy in this game, but when you run into someone tied to a chair.
Yep.
Right.
So I mean, she had already gone far enough, but that's when fucking Abby shows up.
Yeah, and kills Jesse.
Yeah, shoots him right in the face. Unceremonious ending for Jesse, but the game kind of tells you that like fucking death just fucking happens, man.
I was heartbroken when they killed Jesse.
He was a really good fucking guy, man.
Well, he was just a good character in general, and I think like the whole fact that like he just found out that he was going to be a dad, and at one point in time he was talking about how like happy and excited his mom was going to be.
Yeah.
And I'm just like, fuck, man, why do you do this to me?
Yeah, they give you one more stab at really hating Abby, because she comes out of nowhere and just fucking decimates people.
Mm-hmm.
So she kills Jesse. They frame it right so that you don't see Lev in the shot. You don't even know he's there. So they give you that experience to like play as her and meet him, but they don't ruin it. But I mean, I don't know how many people were fucking pissed off. I was like, oh, okay, don't tell me you're cutting to black. And it cuts to black, and we realistically don't get back to that part for like 15 hours.
Yeah.
Oh my god.
It cuts to black and it says Seattle, day one. Like, wait, what?
No.
And I know there was so many people that were like really ticked off at the fact that they had to play as Abby, especially after Abby just kills Jesse. You know that she's killed Joel. Because my son was one of them. He was like, I hate the fact that I have to play as Abby. Like, I hate her. Why? But he got it as the game got on, or went on, obviously. But there was a lot of people at that part that were like, what the fuck? Why is this happening?
And that's where they start to do their best to humanize what we looked at as the villain of the game so far.
And they do it by showing us from the end of the first game where she comes in and finds her father dead.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, they show us her entire perspective the same way that they showed us Ellie's entire perspective. So you get her flashback of, and it just doesn't start with him being dead. It starts with them fucking helping a
Jeez,
oh my
zebra
God.
for fuck's sakes.
That was one of my favorite points in this game as far as visualization wise, because I mean the first one we had the giraffe scene, which I thought was a little bit better than the zebra, but holy hell, that zebra scene was amazing.
And they also had the baby zebra at the end of that scene. That was like deadly.
Yes. Yeah, and then like weren't they by like I can't remember if they were by the ocean.
They were
or
by a
something.
zoo. It was in a zoo.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it was a big league right in front of St. Mary's Hospital.
Yeah, that's what it was. But
That's where they found the zebra.
Yeah, I mean,
Yeah,
Bobbit, we will talk about that because that's a good point. But he basically said that he felt the game was a little too long, and we'll get into that. We'll kind of fast track through Abby's storyline because Abby's storyline has a lot more. It's just shorter than Ellie's. At this point in time, I think we're like 20 hours in, and then the rest is Abby's.
Pretty much.
Yeah, so I mean, you have that moment where they kind of talk about her father and what he was and how he went out, and they kind of lead it into the end of the first game.
Yeah.
And I do like the fact that there is a scene where he's talking to what's her face? I just said it not that long ago. No. Talking to Marlene, and he's like, she's like, the question comes up: would you do it to Abby, or would you, if it was your own child? And the only reason I think the only reason he decided to go with that is because she literally walks in the door and says, "I'd want you to do it if it was me."
right.
So I think, like, I mean, I think he would struggle with that decision a lot more. Then he ended up struggling with it because she kind of directed him to say, you know. And I mean, there's a big argument to say Ellie would probably say the exact same fucking thing.
Well, I mean, we kind of know that she would because of the giant fit that she threw as soon as she did find out the truth. You know.
And I would say QC says that he would have liked Abby's perspective condensed down a bit, not as long. And then he says he understands you want to get the whole attachment. It's true. I mean, in the end, Abby's point almost has to be as long as it is, so that you can get attached to playing as her. You can get her upgraded. You can treat her like this is my character now, and I have enough time to kind of sympathize with her, or at least feel like she's a main character more than she is just being forced down your throat as not being as bad as you think she is. But yeah, they give us her backstory. Sorry, go ahead.
No, go ahead.
They give us her backstory, and then you end up waking up. And I do like the fact that, and this is what I think, a lot of people are not a fan of Abby being like this muscular woman, but they give reasons as to why, and it's also a plot point. And this is the thing I have to always say, like, and when anybody wants to shit on something just because you know, they're trying to force this SJW agenda or something like that, there is a significant plot point for why she is the size she is, but they also explain how she could become the size she is. She lives in a fucking gym, and I mean, she's consumed by vengeance just like Ellie, so she's spending her time beefing up. I mean, I don't think she's like to the point of being ridiculously big. She's not like, she looks strong, but not like like one of those bodybuilders. She doesn't look like a bodybuilder.
That is one thing with these fucking WLF crew that is fucking genius, is they built one of their bases inside a football stadium. I mean, how much more secure can you get with a football stadium?
Yeah, that's genius, and I loved exploring the football stadium personally.
Well, I loved exploring the football stadium as well as the aquarium, because in this chapter they introduced the aquarium as well, and that's where you kind of get like a little bit more of what's going on with her and Owen.
And why Owen will go there. Why she there.
Yeah, they do a good job of kind of showing her perspective over time and giving reason as to why she looks the way she does. And it does matter in the end. But you end up exploring the football stadium, which is super cool. You get to see like how like their society lives, basically. And you get to meet pretty much all the characters that you've already killed. and see them as more than just like these villains.
Yeah, and like even right after the football stadium where they're leaving, and you see the attack happen, and they have to go into that warehouse, and then there's so much storytelling between her and Mel and Owen, like that trifecta that happens from between that point all the way up to like a little bit past the aquarium point. Like there's so much backstory there, and you realize like why Owen and her broke up, and why Owen is with Mel. But then you also realize that there's still something going on between Abby and Owen. I love that part of it because it's just a detail that you don't see in a whole lot of games.
Yeah, and especially like how intricate they are with the details. They don't show too much, but the parts they show allow you to build a much more rich storyline than what's on the surface.
Right. And also with this, with playing the first part and playing this one as well, I didn't notice it at first when I was playing the first game because I got so frustrated with it the first time through that I was just like, fuck it, and I put it to the side, and then this one came out. So I back and played it. Isaac. He's mentioned in the first game as well as heavily in this game.
Yeah, I mean I think he's in the notes, and I saw this thing online where he's actually one of the people in a poster for Most Wanted. They have like a Most Wanted poster that's up on a bunch of things, and he's one of the 6 people's faces.
Yeah. That's another little Naughty Dog thing that they do.
Oh, they do a great way of a great visual style of world building.
Yeah, they slowly introduce you to a character through writing in a video game. I mean, what other company does that?
Yeah, it's just the amount of work that goes into building something so intricate is I can't even fathom it, but I have to appreciate it when I see it.
And I know that we're still in like the review part of it, but like that was one of the things that I did not understand with this game getting quite as much hate as it did, because they put so much fucking work into this game. Whether you like the storyline or not, there's so much that is in this game and that ties this game to the first game.
I mean, they put 6 years into it.
Exactly.
There's things you have to, no matter what you think of the storyline, there's things you have to respect from a gaming point of view. And you continue to show disrespect to that type of gaming, you might never have that type of gaming again. So kind of, be respectful where you need to be, but be critical where you need to be too. So I feel like people just kind of like take the one brush of hate and hit something with it, and that's it.
Right.
But so where were we in the storyline? We were through the stadium. They end up going out and they get attacked by scars.
Right, that's where they end up in the
boat shop in the warehouse.
Yep.
And the one thing I loved, you look at Abby. Abby plays so different than Ellie. As 2 characters, they have completely different skill sets. Abby plays a lot like Joel from the first game. She's more physical, and she has to build shivs, things like that.
And I noticed that, like, as time went on with Abby, her weapons were much more, I guess, I'm sorry? Primal and deadly than Ellie's was, because Ellie's was a lot of guns that she'd pick up or whatever.
Ellie has the regular bow, Abby has the crossbow.
Right, and then there's just so much with the different intricacies of the weapons between the two alone, let alone the characters.
The weapons also kind of match the personalities and the physicality of the person that's wielding them. So it's good to see the difference, and this is how playing through Abby's didn't really feel like a retread of playing the game again. They did a wonderful job of kind of like making it the same but different. There's a lot of other things too, like Manny is her like Dina basically at the beginning, or maybe Owen is her Dina, but Manny's like her Jessie. As going through the game, like I actually enjoyed those two's banter more than I enjoyed any banter that's on Ellie's side.
Well, I mean, Manny and Abby, they just had this connection, and you could tell that. right, or like best friends, you know.
Well, they lived together, and she slept in the fucking library, or whatever it was, so that he could have sex in the room.
Well, yeah, and you could tell like how close they are because not only was he talking to her about this whole sexual adventures that he was having, but at one point in time he ran into a teacher when they were still in the stadium, and he was like, oh hey, and she's like, oh, her too, and then she finds the bra in their room. Their relationship is just
It's more
one of
humor
those
based, but it's also more
Yeah.
like we're bros type deal, like
Right.
good friends basically. And it's
Mhm.
the one thing that Ellie's side missed, for me at least.
But I think that Ellie's side almost had to miss that because Ellie is a loner.
And her storyline is much more serious at this point. Like you start Ellie's storyline at like the lowest of lows, where you don't like. Arguably, you'd say you start Abby's storyline at the almost the higher of highs, because they've already killed Joel, and she's kind of vindicated that she got the revenge she needed, right?
Right, and at first she has absolutely no idea that there's anybody coming after her. So like she's literally at the highest of highs.
Yeah,
Not only that,
it's
being called up to the top to go talk to the head guy in charge.
Exactly.
like you can tell that and this is the one thing that they do that's really good too. You can tell that like that community was built off of smaller communities.
Yeah.
Because there is a point in time when even Isaac calls out and says like, "Oh, the Salt Lake team or whatever." I can't remember exactly, but he's like, "Oh, they're close. The Salt Lake
crew.
team or whatever, Salt Lake crew." So you kind of get the idea that the group of friends that went to kill Joel were friends way before they joined WLF.
Well, and I you know for a fact that Abby and Owen were for sure because they were
Oh, they were in
dating
from the
when
beginning.
her
yeah.
dad was
They were
killed.
Fireflies, right? So they were the Firefly
Right.
crew beforehand.
I have a feeling they all were that.
I was
group
gonna
of
say
fireflies. Even Nora at the end, when we kill her, she sits there, "You're her."
Yeah.
Yeah, and even Mel at one point in time when like later on in the game when they're talking or whatever and she says, well, do you even think that there's any of us that are still alive?
Yeah, I mean it's cool to have like the Fireflies still exist in some realm, even though that they've adopted something else because they kind of been beaten down to a point where they're so scattered. But okay, so we where were we?
She just got the
Oh,
news.
we're in the open world area, or not really, but like it was all gameplay with her and Manny and Mel, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
Yeah. So you're looking for. You're going to the forward operating base, where
Yes.
Isaac is, because you're trying to make. I guess. I don't know if you were called there. You were called there, right?
Yeah, you were called there.
He's calling everybody that is part of the WLF to the forward operating base for a massive attack.
Yeah, to end
Yeah,
up basically,
but at the ti-
launching an attack on the island where the scars are.
Well,
Yeah.
he was talking about launching an attack, but at one point in time too, he was also talking about possible retreat because he's like, if we don't do this attack, then we're going to have no choice but to retreat. And that's when people were like, everybody around Abby was throwing a fit about retreating. And then ultimately, we found out later on in the game what they did, but
Yeah,
this,
I mean, it was he was at that point where it's like these, no more small skirmishes. We're gonna obliterate these fucking people because it's like, and they kind of show you when you get to the forward operating base, because we're just might as well flash forward to there because nothing really happens in between too much.
Yeah, it's
right.
You get to the forward operating base and you get to walk through there, and it's got a more militaristic vibe than where you were beforehand. There's a lot of people there, and they're kind of doing like some guys speaking like this is the mission, this is what we're gonna do, and you go through the hospital and see how many people have been killed by the scars, and you kind of see the impact that they're having, where it's to the point where we're tired of losing people for bullshit.
And one of the most powerful segments of this chapter for me was when they're walking down the hallway to go and see Isaac, and you see that they're torturing the scars that they caught.
Yeah, well, I mean, this is the other thing. They established like Abby and those people as just they're just a group of whatever. But then they also show the dark side when you get to the Ford operating base, and they have like you said, they have people in prison, and they're torturing them. And you meet Isaac, and he's in the middle of like some fucked up interrogation because you see full man bush of this guy just sitting there, and I don't know if it was just me, but the guy. The guy Isaac comes off as really fucking creep central.
Yeah.
It's like he tries to present himself as like a fatherly figure, but there's just this weird creepness to this motherfucker.
Yeah, he's super
There
creepy,
is
but
a lot of creepiness to him. He reminds me a lot of the oh god, the character Lawrence Fishburne played, not Lawrence, plays in Star Wars, Rogue One.
Yeah, not Lawrence Fishburne, but the guy with the eye.
Yes.
Yeah, the ghost dog,
Creepy.
whatever his name is.
Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah.
I know what you're talking about.
Reminds me a lot, but I can't.
The
know what
voice
they-
actor is like super. He's pretty fucking famous, and he's great. His voice is great. He was in Westworld. If anybody watched it, he's a great. His voice is just fucking phenomenal as a voice actor.
And the
Well, you know
emotion
what?
he puts into it, it feels cold.
right. I noticed like something else that that happens throughout while you're playing with Abby. Do you remember back to when like they flash back to before her father was killed with the whole zebra scene and stuff?
Mm-hmm.
She was collecting coins for her dad, and
You keep that up.
right, and you fast forward to this, and she finds a coin when she's on her way to see Alex, or not Alex. Alex is in the fuck chat. Hi, Alex. When she's on her
Alex
way,
on the brain.
Shut up. When she's on her way to see Isaac, she finds another coin, and I just that was something that was just a little added measure to show how significant her father's and hers relationship actually was, and it continues to be, despite the fact that he's gone.
Well, I mean, the collectibles, and this is the thing, playing the game, and the collectibles draw parallels to where the storyline is at a given time, and they're masterful with it. I didn't have the time to collect everything while streaming, so the next time I play the game, if I play the game, this is the one thing that we're going to get to later, for me at least, but if I play the game again, I probably will focus a lot more on getting every single fucking thing and just looking or doing a more deep dive into the game while playing it. But we get back, and Isaac is creepy as fuck, and he does have a pretty in-depth conversation with Abby, where Abby like says, I think he says like he wants her to be one of the people leading the charge, and you can form your own team. And she's like, I want Owen, and then it turns out that Owen had ended up killing one of his friends, or shooting one of his friends to protect one of the bad people, or Seraphites. I think he spills the beans on that one, if I recall.
Yeah.
He doesn't really. With that, when we first get to the base, we go in to check on Mel because she was injured during the skirmish. That's when we also see Nora, and she brings him to the back to go and show them Owen's patrol buddy Danny.
Yeah, and he's dead.
Which apparently, at this point, once we get up to Isaac tells her that Danny was shot by Owen.
And not
Over
only
a star.
that, right? Not only that, but they kind of nail in that fact by saying he was shot in the stomach and he walked all the way back here just so he could say what happened.
Yeah, and even questions around that. He's like, do you think he would like use his last breaths to lie to me?
Yeah, use his dying breath to lie.
And it's quite clear now that Abby's in a position where if she continues to go after Owen, she is kind of in violation of what they want her to do. So, like, I mean, they kind of hammer that home when they go in the past with when they've gone in the past with Abby, that she's, we got to go to training. We got to go to training. They're gonna kick us out if we don't go to training. But in the end, Owen is more important to her than the actual WLF, because she continues to go in that direction.
Well, as far as we know, she's known Owen her whole life.
Right.
Yeah, it seems that way. I mean, especially from the whole life that we get to see, she has.
Well, and it's pretty evident right away that, like, even before we see anything else. It's evident from the moment that you see the first scene between Abby and Owen when you're still playing as Ellie, that those two are still wildly in love with each other.
They definitely have a connection stronger than just friends or whatever, because they're weird and awkward with each other when you first meet them. But from the forward operating base, you end up leaving, and I can't like you and Manny leave, and then Manny's like, "This is as far as I go," or some shit, right?
Yeah, because you're going after Owen.
Yeah, and he's like, he gets it because he's bro for life.
Yeah, so basically he helps Abby escape. Well, not escape, but sneak out of the camp so that she can go and find Owen.
So there's not a lot of like the next storyline is basically when she gets to
she gets captured. We are led through with the gameplay through the town. She gets close to it. She gets to the aquarium actually.
Yeah.
Well, she gets to the aquarium
after captured by the scars.
So she gets this is one thing I have to say too, because when this game first got announced, one of the trailers that they showed that they put out there, like I think it was the only trailer I saw, was the almost the entire scene of Abby being dragged by the scars to then be hung up and be saved by Lev and Yara. Yeah. They showed that whole scene, and I think that was a huge mistake. Because looking back at the game, if I never saw that scene before, that scene is fucking super intense. It's one of the most intense scenes in the fucking game, and it's probably one of the most intense scenes, but also one of the most that lend itself to horror. Where the game is like it is partially a horror survival game, but that is one of the most vicious ones. I personally wouldn't have put that scene out there because it's very important to see for the first time the scars and what they actually do to people, and also like get introduced to a couple new characters.
Right.
But yeah, in my opinion, it was a huge mistake to put that out there.
I definitely would have shown the whole scene, and probably I would have shown her being drugged and hung, but then flashed to a different part of the game, so it left you in suspense as to what's going on, without actually showing the scars themselves.
And I'm sorry, you guys, I can't remember quite, because I know that at really close in here, she starts having the flashbacks of when Owen first found the aquarium. And was that not when she was hanging there, or was that after that scene?
That was finding the first when they first found the aquarium. That's part of Abby's beginning part of playing as Abby.
Okay.
Yeah, remember? Okay, we kind of skipped a scene where they were on the Ferris wheel and they both jumped down and they went through the aquarium.
Okay, yep. I remember. Okay,
it was a really cool scene, and that actually is a really important scene. So we can talk about it briefly. They go through the aquarium. Why?
Because do you have any idea how long I ran around that aquarium before I finally, I stood in front of that skeleton dude for I don't even know how many times. And
or before you
finally, I think my game was glitching because it never showed me that he had a note there with keys.
Oh my god!
If you remember, Basement, I was actually on call with you that night when I was playing it. I was like, "What the fuck?" And then I ended up having to restart the chapter, and then it showed me it. I was like, "Fuck you, man."
I mean, but okay, it's like no matter the technical issues you might have had, the scene was important to show. That was like the end of Abby and fucking Owen's potential relationship,
right.
And it's like the guy fucking.
That's the scene where they were like.
No, we're not there yet.
Okay,
we'll get there. He took her to the aquarium. This scene reminded me of the fucking Notebook, man. Fucking swinging on the Ferris wheel, and then he jumped into the water, and then they went on a fantastical journey through the aquarium. And he's like, "I told you they have spots." When he's talking about the fucking sea lion or whatever the fuck it is, and then it's like this was when Abby showed that she couldn't give up vengeance for having a life that wasn't directed at it. Because she kind of like turns Owen down, and he's like, "Oh man, I did all this fucking shit for the tank."
Second time was when we go back as Abby. When she has the news for him that she found the lead on Tommy.
Yeah, that's the second time. But yeah, that was an important scene, so I just wanted to point it out because it does show that she's basically Ellie. They're the two sides to the same coin. But the aquarium was really cool. Like, I mean, this game does something really great that some of the settings are just fucking incredible.
Yes.
Like the set pieces and stuff.
Graphics and all that behind. Getting just the right piece of seaweed to flow just the right way with the water that's trapped in there. It's great.
I'm not gonna lie, the kids' like artwork on the page fucking looked like monsters.
Yes.
But yeah, we're now at a place where we're going back to we're leading up to the Pound Town, right?
Yes.
Yeah. So
she gets back to the aquarium.
Right. And according to what I'm reading right now, that's actually when she flashes back to the cutscene where she had to follow Owen up the stairs. And I think this is the cutscene. Was this the cutscene like after they had already broken up with Mel, where he turned that apartment into like a Christmas?
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay.
He hung the lanterns and it looked super cool.
Yeah.
And I think this is where you do like the target practice if you want to.
The
Which is impossible.
arrow game.
Yeah, you do the little arrow game, and this is where she kind of like tells him, "Oh, we got a link on Tommy, which is Joel's brother, and we've seen him here, so we're all going, and Mel's already in." But then I guess like I mean going back to that scene doesn't have too much value, I guess, as this flashback.
But isn't this? Well, first of all, this is the scene because I remember this quite fondly, not fondly, but quite vividly, I should say, because I've seen small titties on my screen.
Mm-hmm.
And he was so aggressive, like so aggressive.
You know what
but
though?
anyway.
This is one of the best scenes in the game. Not the no. Hear me out. Not the sex part of it. It's just added on because this shows how fucking done Owen is, and he's got this like when she talks to him about having saved a Seraphite and shot his on-duty buddy. That to me was like such a good scene. The way he's like he looked up at me and he was old, and he was just done, and he realizes that he's the same. He's not old, but he's fucking done, killing people.
I don't want to fight for a land I don't give a fuck about anymore.
Yeah, and I mean I feel like this like he's first of all he's drunk. But second of all, he's done with everything, and this is why I think he like basically goes ham on her ass.
Oh, and
like why it's not so consensual. I mean, I don't think it's not consensual. I just feel like him and her for all the flashbacks that we've seen has always been like, we really like each other, but we're beating around the bush. So eventually he's like, well, I'm gonna beat in the bush.
Well, and this is when he very, very first brings up finding fireflies, isn't it?
No.
Or is that right?
The Christmas scene.
This is when he says that he wants to go somewhere because there's
somewhere,
word
right?
that there could be an old base from the Fireflies in Santa Barbara or something like that.
Yeah, that's when he starts talking about the fireflies, like not actually leaving, but just like.
No, I think he talks about taking the boat and going.
He mentioned he mentioned fireflies reforming possibly in Santa Barbara because of the new girl that joined in with the WLF during the Christmas scene.
Yeah, the fighting turned into a sex and snap. I think like the reason. Okay, QC. I think the reason it was done the way it was. I mean, I kind of said it already, but like the fact that the decisions that he had made to shoot someone from the WLF had made him basically a marked man at that point in time. He couldn't go back. But it's also like that he got to that point where he's like, I'm just fucking gonna go for everything now because I already took that step, and he ended up taking that step with Abby. I don't know if they had sex before that point.
I'm pretty sure that they did, but like,
More
It's
than
not shown.
likely
At
they
least.
did.
It's not
yeah,
shown.
but like,
Okay, it's not shown.
I think that
I want to see.
one, he was drunk, like Basement pointed out, but I think the fact that like it wasn't just that he was fed up with everything that was going on with the
WLF.
organized, I was going to say the WTF, the WLF. He's not just fed up with that. He's lost as far as to like what he wants to do with Mel and the baby, because he feels obligated to Mel and the baby, but he's obviously in love with Abby. So I think being drunk leads to spontaneous combustion of his brain, so to speak. So it's just like his
Also, it's like everything around him is
emotions just take over.
gone to shit. Like he's lost. Period. Because like you think about the Fireflies too. Beforehand, he was a Firefly. They were literally fighting to save humanity. And then you get that taken away from you, and now what you're fighting is against some random religious cult, where
Right.
the outcome means nothing to the man. So he's like, I stopped doing terrible things for a cause I don't care about. So I'm gonna just take life by the fucking balls and go from here. And then I think that's why he kind of like forced himself on her, kind of.
But I mean, I don't think that he necessarily forced himself on her either, because I mean, it's not like she was like, no,
She didn't
no,
fight
no.
again. They like I
You
think
know?
they kissed a bit, and then he's like, "All right, here's my erect penis." Immediately.
And I mean, sometimes, I mean, obviously, like angry sex usually doesn't happen quite like that so fast. But I mean, let's face it, angry sex is a thing.
Yeah, you can have hate sex.
It's not just on his part either. I mean, she was also
She was
frustrated
angry.
with the fact that he wasn't coming back with her, so she wasn't going to have him.
Yeah, so you
Mhm.
might as well go balls deep. But yeah, it happened. It was pretty risque for video games. I mean, they didn't show too much, but they did give us a bit of the nips and a couple. I think he plowed a bit.
The nips. Basement, they showed all of her flat titty chesties.
Yeah, but it's like the nipples that are like illegal for some reason.
Yeah, well, it's kind of like man boobs in a way, because like,
Well, you
because
see
I remember
the
playing
front.
and I'm like, oh my god, this
She-
girl has
she had-
taller
she-
boobs than I do.
She had boobs like The Rock before he got his surgery.
Exactly.
Whatever. She got plowed, and that was that. And I can't remember where it goes after that. It's like my
I think
mind
we
just
should
started
shoot back to the
fireworks.
forest, right?
After that, she wakes up from having a dream about Yara and Lev hanging.
Yeah, and she
And
decides to go
Parading
back.
that her father's killed her.
Yeah, it leads us to the forest where she goes to rescue them, right?
Well, that's why
It
that
leads
scene
us
is so
back to the
important.
trailer park.
That's why that scene with her
Yeah.
and Owen is so important, because his change in mindset literally impacts her change in mindset to go back. Like, she's actively helping the enemy. She's already helped the enemy, and I think that's why she was more understanding of what he was saying, because they
Right.
saved her, and then she carried one of them with broken arm back to the trailer right before
Yep.
she meets up with Owen and goes to Pound Town.
Isn't this the scene where we have to fight Helga?
No, I think we
That's
did that
bringing
before.
Yev and Lara to that trailer where she resets.
No, I know that, but we run into that really tall Seraphite. Is that
That's like when we
Female,
get
or is that
captured.
the-
That's when we get
Just-
captured.
We're going back.
okay?
That's when we get
That's-
captured right
that's
before we get
correct.
hung as Abby.
Yev and
Okay, because I'm reading this and it says fight tall Seraphite. Seraphite will swing 1 to 3 times. Blah 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 blah. So that's why
You end up
that was-
fighting Helga a couple times, or a version of her.
Well, I was gonna say there was a male and a female version of Helga.
Well, what's
And
funny
we
is
thought that-
as Ellie, you meet the male version, and then as Abby, you meet the female version. So it's a complete circle.
Yeah. But you go back, and Abby's made the decision to help these people, and like her arm, like when I saw that, I was like, yeah, she's fucked. Her arm was like bright red. I'm like, yeah, you're gonna lose that motherfucker for sure. But she ends up taking them, and she brings them back to the hospital. Is there anything else really happen between that? I don't think so, right?
She doesn't bring them back to the
Oh,
hospital.
well,
she
she-
brings
aquarium.
them back to the aquarium
Where the doctor is, sorry.
where
uh,
Mel
She
is,
brings
and
back to
then
the aquarium, and Mel looks at her arm and says she has compartment syndrome. I need this, and then Abby goes off to the hospital with Lev.
but before that, this is also where Owen and Mel tell her definitively that they are leaving. for your
Yeah,
coat.
and I think if I'm not wrong, no, I am wrong. I won't say it yet. So they end up going to the hospital. I gotta pee really badly, so you guys take over for a minute and continue where we were.
Okay.
Yeah, Lev tells them about a bridge that'll cut the time from a day into 2 hours.
Oh my god, I hated this bridge
I did too.
so badly. Like I never fell off of it, but geez, well, and you're also introduced again to the fact that Abby is incredibly afraid of heights.
Yeah, she has vertigo.
So yeah, so like as you're playing, you're not only just trying to keep your balance like that, but you also have to deal with the vertigo that Abby is facing. So like it's even harder to try to keep your damn balance.
Especially when she's panting and she's like shaking as she's walking.
Mhm.
And then
Yeah.
you fall off the very top of this goddamn thing.
Right.
You end up in this, I guess it's a hotel or like a business sky tower of some sort.
Mhm.
It's like
Yeah,
right
and-
in the hospital.
Yeah, and that's when Lev's like, well, there's a hospital, we gotta make our way there. And if I remember, we encounter a couple of bloaters on the way, don't we?
Yes.
Okay.
And what makes it even worse is Love doesn't have a mask and you encounter spores. So it's just like you have to go through like 3 floors by yourself just to find a fucking mask.
Yeah, well, and I remember too, I remember thinking, well, why the fuck do I have to go find a mask because she's immune? But then I'm like, wait, I'm not playing as Ellie, I'm playing as Abby.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that part fucked me up too. It's just like, wait, what?
Yeah.
It's also
and
when we're introduced to Abby's flame, which is my favorite fucking weapon. I'm sorry.
yeah, the flamethrower is pretty badass. So, yeah, we have to make our way through the hospital to the intensive care unit, and
Oh,
this
God.
is where that fucking monster of a fucking thing is, whatever it's called, where it's like a bunch of those things all up in one.
So I love how they'll like actually allude to there being we're going to basically ground zero for Seattle. This is where the first patients went, so it kind of makes sense for that creature to be there.
They flat out tell you this is exactly where you're going. It's going to be covered in overgrowth.
Yeah, and it's been that way for a long time and nobody's touched it, so it makes sense for that monster to be down there. But they also like give you like a hint that what the fuck is behind that door. And then when you turn on the power and you go out there, it looks like a fucking huge anus. Whatever it was escaped from it.
Yeah, it was fucking insane.
Yeah, I died so many times in this part, so many fucking times, to the point where I was almost about ready to give up. Like I was on Skype again with Basement, and I'm like, oh my god, fuck this game, fuck this game. He's like, no, you can do it.
See, then this is the other thing too, with different perspectives. There's different parts of the game where I struggled. I think I killed that thing like on my second or third try. Where the part with the dogs originally, like I fucking had to do that like 4 or 5 times, and it was frustrating as shit.
Yes, see, and the part with the dogs. Now you can chalk this up to the fact that I did watch that part when you were playing, so I knew what was coming. But the part with the dogs, I breezed through. Like I think I only died maybe once. And that's like both times that you encountered the dogs. But
yeah, well, I mean, I think it's
part-
also
that
getting
monster-
used to the game mechanics for me was tough for that one.
Right.
Apparently, the fucking gigantic thing was called the Rat King.
Yeah, I heard that that's what it's called, and there's like a couple of, I mean, I haven't seen them, but I'd be interested to see YouTube videos that like deep dive into, you know, this is what the origin of the creature is. I'm pretty sure it's the first person that got infected in Seattle ended up in a room with a bunch of other people that got infected, and they closed the room after they all died, and or when they turned, and they all just melded into each other.
Yeah, they morphed
But
into
it's like seen throughout this entire gameplay. Those fucking mounds and spores just thrown together on the wall.
Yeah, they were grown into the wall. I mean, this was really interesting. I mean, the best boss fight in the game, arguably, is saved for Abby. Like the best boss fight that is at least with all your weapons and shit like that.
Yeah, absolutely.
But yeah, this was. I mean, I thought this was a great idea to introduce another form of how far the virus can go for the infected. and it was intense, super intense for me with headphones, pissing my pants.
Yeah.
But I think you end up getting what you need from the hospital, and you go back, and this is where they need to do the operation to cut off her arm. But I think also Mel is like a fucking bitch.
Yeah, she sits there and basically calls Abby
a bitch.
Calls Abby a bitch and a liar, saying that she's not going to win Owen back by saving these two kids' lives.
Mm-hmm.
And if she really wants to help these kids, she'll stay out of their lives.
I mean,
it's also when Mel's sister says, "I'm not going to Santa Barbara if you are."
Right, but I mean, in the same sense, like Mel, your first reaction is, God, she's such a bitch.
But I mean,
but you
she's
also
right.
have to.
Because Abby,
you also have to.
Owen kind of.
Yeah, but, yeah, exactly. You know, so like you have to take a step back and realize that Mel is seeing all of their interactions together.
Yes.
You know, so she's not dumb. She knows that Owen is still in love with Abby, and that there's not going to be any chance of a future with her and Owen and this baby if Abby is near.
Yeah, I mean, her actions make sense. It's just, yeah, you're obviously thinking, like, what a fucking bitch, man. I went through, after what I went through, fighting this fucking monstrosity in the basement, I was like, fucking hell, man. Show me some love.
This is also when Yara and Lev have the fight about going back for their mother.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And I mean, this is where, like, the whole Lev storyline, that they kind of, she shaved her head, and because she identifies as a man,
Right.
they don't outright say it, but that's the storyline they're telling.
Because while you're playing this game and the Seraphites are talking about the apostates, which are Yara and Lev, they keep calling Lev Lily.
Yeah. I mean, they heavily allude to it. This for me was, I'll explain my thoughts on this afterwards. I don't want to get too much into that now. But yeah, you end up getting together with Yara to go after Lev, because Lev steals the boat and heads to the island, and you end up following it, and basically you're on an island filled with enemies.
I'm going to tell you right now, the island scene was one of, if not the most intense
scenes
intense. Of these. Oh my God.
The island, though, you have to deal with the Marino, which is Tommy being the sniper.
Yeah, that's true.
Right.
Before you can get to a boat that can take you there, you do go through a scene with Manny where you're trying to fight a sniper. They spell it out that it is him beforehand, but when I was playing it in parts and days in between, I didn't link it.
Completely forgot.
Yeah. But in the end, it's a pretty cool segment, and Manny gets one in the head.
Yep.
He gets unceremoniously brained by Tommy.
Yeah.
And I do like the fact that they do have an encounter before they meet up with each other again, so she kind of might recognize him when she gets to that point where she meets up at the theater.
Yeah.
And he gets thrown in the water, and they move on from there and head to the island. I mean, the island, for the most part, only has a couple real, I guess, important scenes. I mean, the first one, obviously, being finding Lev, and when you do, he had killed his own mother. Which is, yeah, I think it looked like the defense, because he was all cut up, too.
Yeah.
Well, and getting to Lev, or I'm sorry, it's right after you find Lev, and what's her name? Yeah, fucking his sister.
Yara,
thank you. You know, she dies or whatever, and then after that, I feel like it's just
before she dies.
Yeah, it's just a lot of like stealth. Like you have to move. For me, anyway, I had to move slow until I hit a certain point. And then once I got on the horse, then it was like balls to the wall, just fucking run.
I stealthed through most of that area by pure luck, to be honest with you. I was like unstealth, like out in the open, but like somehow I made it through. But yeah, Yara ends up getting killed. She gets shot by Isaac and then the crew. And then Isaac comes in to talk to Abby, and she ends up saving everybody by like lighting them up, and then fucking turns into just like a complete pile of bullets.
Swiss cheese, yeah.
But I was glad to see that she went out in like a good way. Yeah, a blaze of glory instead of just one shot and fall to the ground. That's it.
But I think like when she died too, and the whole encounter with Isaac, and the fact that Isaac turned all of her friends against her, it was a crowning moment for Abby's character, because she's no longer this universal soldier that they had used her as. Like, she's taking on her own personality, her own growing up, I guess you could say.
Yeah, well, she's separated herself from like more of a mob mentality, because they were never like intrinsically about the killing of scars to take territory. Like, and Owen said it perfectly. She didn't say it, but you know she agrees with it from her actions that happened before and after that point.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, I mean, throughout the island, you have a lot of stealth segments. But as far as like storyline goes, after you kill Isaac, it's basically a rush to get the fuck out of there.
Yeah.
Yeah,
And
exactly.
just everything goes to shit because you're in the middle of a war zone between two warring factions, just trying to leave, and like the place gets on fire, and you have this fucking one-on-one fight with the Joker.
Well, I mean, and not only are you in between two factions that want to kill each other, but both of them are also trying to kill you, because Abby's
well, they just assume she's a WLF, and they all hate the apostate.
Right, but the WLF turns on Abby, but then the Seraphites, they hate Abby, but they also turned on Lev. So both of them are under fire from both sides.
Yeah, it's you're basically like you're in the middle of a war zone, and you're public enemy number one. You end up getting through it, and then you fight. You have this fist fight, kind of. With this giant dude, and that was just blew me away. I don't know, like the visuals of everything burning and you fucking going toe to toe with the Great Khali.
Well, and the Great Khali just did not want to fucking die. Like
I don't understand. He got his face chopped in half, and he's still like fucking haymakering me. I'm like, oh my god. At this point in time, I would just fall over dead. But you know, whatever.
He had the fucking giant hammer of doom.
Yeah. I mean, it takes a lot to kill that guy, and it's one of those like mini boss fights that they put in the game that adds to it. You end up taking him down, but you leave your pack behind, so you're like weaponless for the most part.
Yeah.
And then you end up getting out of leaving the island just to go back to find your dead friends in the aquarium.
Which. Before that, when Ellie kills Owen and Mel, you see them zoom in on the map that Ellie had, the tourist map.
Yep.
Which, when you come back as Abby with Lev finds the map, picks it up, and goes, I think they're here.
Yeah, I mean, she leaves it behind because she's in shock, and they use it to backtrack.
Yeah.
And then we get back to that point where she ends up one-on-one with Ellie, but before that happens, I thought Tommy died because he got shot in the fucking head.
Yeah.
And then they
that's good of a shot because it just grazed.
Yeah, and even watching it back, it does show that it looks like it grazes his head. But he's out of commission, and then you go, and this was tough for me. This one-on-one fight where you're Abby trying to take down Ellie. Not only was it like
that you did to Ellie, it's just like, oh my fucking god, this is diabolical.
Oh, we're at Pound Town in the video.
Yes, we are.
But yeah, it's like, and it's cool because Ellie actually, though it's AI and it's not going to fight like another human character, she actually starts setting traps and using all the things at her disposal, so it does feel a bit more like you're fighting Ellie. This was one where it's like you don't even. I just wanted to stand up and get shot in the head. So I'm like, I'd rather Ellie live than Abby at this point. But they force you to go through the motions. I had trouble with this fight, personally, in terms of like gameplay.
I did. It took me like 6 tries in order to get it.
Same, and it was just Ellie was like a fucking beast, in that, like, no matter what you did, she was hunting you down, and she was right on top of you, and I was like, God damn it.
I died in a fucking cutscene.
This fight were the same as the fight for Dave and Ellie.
Yeah, it mirrors that fight exactly, because you end up in a place where there's like broken pottery or some shit on the ground, and if you step over it, she's like, what was that? I'm coming. I died in a cutscene here. Like, I was rolling over in the cutscene and we just both exploded because we rolled on like a pipe bomb or something.
One of the mines.
I was glad that it didn't force me to replay everything.
Well, and I was... After a while, I realized that the whole thing with Ellie was, one, you had to stealth, but then you also had to run your fucking ass off in that too, because, like, if she was near you, you had to, like, hide, but then if she saw you, you had to fucking run. Because if you didn't run, even if you tried to fire back at her, it's still, like, you were dead.
Yeah.
She was just, like, unstoppable. So the only way for me to beat it personally was to stealth and then to, like, run around and hide and almost, like, sneak up on her from behind.
Yeah, I would say, like, I mean, the fight was difficult. We ended up getting past it in the end. I like the fact that Abby wins, and the fact she was almost ready to kill the pregnant woman without hesitation. Dina, like, she's like, she's pregnant. It's the exact same fucking thing.
Like,
she choked. Ellie was choking on her blood just like Owen was when he said the exact same words.
Yep.
And in the end, she decides not to do it. And she decides not to kill her either, but does come to the point where she's like, don't let me see you again. And I think that's because, like, I mean, for the most part, I guess Abby's vengeance, she got it for her father, but I guess because she went through the problems, like, that vengeance brings, she was more willing to not exact it on Ellie.
Not only that, but I think, like, a lot of it with Abby was the fact that she had Lev, and Lev didn't have anybody else, so she had to take care of Lev, and she needed to make sure that she was alive in order to take care of him. So I think that just having him in her life at that time and having that responsibility kind of molded her into a more responsible person, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
It made her realize that vengeance wasn't everything.
Right.
I mean, and then we get to the point where I think we flash forward now to them living on a farm, right?
Yes.
Yes.
Yeah. And I mean, this is like the prototypical best possible fucking life ever. And she wakes up and they have the little kid, and
who was fucking adorable, by the way.
This scene for me was really good because it showed you that she basically didn't get what she wanted, but she got everything that she'd probably want if she was older, or like more experienced in life. Like you don't like punch a gift horse in the mouth or whatever the fucking saying is. But yeah, she ends up on a farm with Dina. They have a kid. You certainly go through the motions, and it's kind of weird because you're like, man, you can't put me through all that shit and now this. And I think I love the scene where she tries to herd the goats into a farm, and everything just comes flashing back to her, and she's like hyperventilating, and she is just fucked. And then they show under the cover of what looks like perfection or the greatest thing ever, she's still completely fucked, and she can't enjoy that life because she can't live that life. She's not there mentally.
Yeah, because of her PTSD, she has flashbacks with loud noises, loud bangs and stuff like that. She sees the killing of Joel, all that all over again, and then from there we get Tommy showing up.
Goddamn
Tommy. Fuck Tommy.
You know what? Like, the thing is, I don't know. Tommy lost everything as well. Tommy. Okay, here's the thing. Tommy went on the same mission as she did, and lost more than she did.
He didn't. He never got his vengeance, and on top of that, he got another reason to be vengeful.
Yeah, he came back, and him and his wife are on the outs. Not only that, but he's a cripple.
He's all fucked up.
And all fucked
Yeah.
up. Is Quasimodo'd. So, I mean, he's still stuck in that mindset because he gained absolutely nothing. Meanwhile, and he does say it, I think, when he talks to her, he's like, well, you're living here in the lap of luxury or something, like you've got this. So he kind of throws it in her face that she has a family. And it makes me kind of hate Tommy in that moment. Like, I did hate Tommy in that moment, but I can, after taking time and thinking about it, I understand why he's the way he is. He's like the example of someone completely taken over by vengeance. He's as ugly on the inside. Well, he's as ugly on the inside as he is on the outside now. He's completely warped, and he can't give it up.
The first Last of Us before.
Yep, very similar.
Ellie.
Very similar.
Yeah, because
he's got nothing left to live for except for that.
Exactly, you know, and on top of the fact that like he's got all this pent up anger that he can't do it himself. Because at one point in time he actually says, "I can't do it," like, and then he just doesn't say anything else. Like, I can't. It's that insinuation that I can't do it. Somebody needs to, and it's got to be you.
And I mean, that's a lot to put on somebody, especially now that she's got more to lose.
Yeah.
And I mean, if she didn't have the PTSD and like the constant flashbacks, I don't think anything would happen. But then she gets to the point where she's like, you know, I don't sleep, man. I'm fucked. I need to do this. I can't be this fucking married woman.
Well, and that scene where she has the panic attacks in the barn and stuff is very powerful, just in the fact that like she has the baby.
Yeah.
And you see
the baby doesn't even matter.
Right, like you see Dina come out and she's like, I need to take him, you know, and Dina's kind of like this motherly figure to both the baby and to Ellie.
Yeah,
which she has to be, because otherwise Ellie is not going to come down from that.
I think they do a really good job of subtly pointing out certain things in The Last of Us, and PTSD is one of those, where it subtly shows like she can't get over what's happening, and then you have her leave in the middle of the night, and tell Dina like, I can't sleep, I can't do this, I'm not like you or whatever, but she also like she doesn't even fucking say anything to the fucking baby. She just is out.
But
she didn't even look at the baby at the end. She just or say goodbye to the baby. She's just like, that shit doesn't matter.
But this is also the point where I could almost see a part 3 coming, just because of like how
I will say
ended.
We'll talk about it soon because
we'll get there, because with that,
but I definitely.
We then cut back to Abby and Lev in Santa Barbara, Fireflies.
Yep. And, I mean, they go on a hunt for the Fireflies. They do find out that they have some sort of holding on an island, and they decide to follow them before fucking Dog the Bounty Hunter finds them.
Which, that's actually a group called the Rattlers.
Yeah, the Rattlers find them, and they beat the fuck out of Abby and knock Lev unconscious, and that's that. We switch back over to Ellie. She's got shorter hair now. She's decided to continue her vengeance mission. And she's in Santa Barbara, and you go looking for them, and then you end up getting caught by the Rattlers as well. Well, you get in a trap that throws you into the air.
Turning the trap on them.
Yeah, and at that point in time, you can see how fucking savage Ellie had become. She's just like fucking no nonsense, shooting everyone, doesn't fucking matter. Just kills those two guys that were close to her. That trapped her, and then she goes on a mission to find Abby by killing everyone in sight. And the Rattlers are some fucked up people.
They are, and like from the point of having to get through all of them in order to get to where you got to crawl underneath the train car, and then you see their
they're basically
compound.
In that compound, they're basically keeping infected as pets. It's like, what?
Yeah, they're really weird fucking
infected,
people.
Not only infected, they have like people in there because like
they infect them on purpose if they're not doing their chores.
Well, they basically make them do all like the boring tasks, and they don't feed them. And when they outrun their usefulness, they kill them or They put them up on those crosses, and they just fucking find more people. So they're using people that way, and yep.
No, go ahead.
I was just gonna say, like, you end up getting past most of them, and you get to a place where you unlock the cages, and you find out that Lev and Abby aren't still. They say they're down by the, what did they say? Crosses or fingers or something.
The poles, I think.
Something like
They're on the poles, I think they say.
So it seems like people that act up or try to rebel get put out there to die a slow, horrible death.
Well, yeah, because they're basically strung up on poles and just left there. No food, no water for the animals to basically eat off of.
And this is where...
Like the pot or the pillars or something like that.
Yeah, the pillars, I think is what they call them.
The pillars, that's what it is, yeah.
And this is where, like, you end up finding Abby and Lev. And I walked around this area for a bit. I found Lev. But then I found Abby, and I'm like, oh, God, no.
What Abby was dwindled down to from being emaciated is just holy fuck.
Okay, I have to admit, I was back watching you live by this time because I had finished the game. And I'm sitting there, you're wandering around. It took you so long to find Abby. And I'm like, really, bro? Because, like, when I was playing it, I just walked up. She was the first one.
Well,
But
it took me time because I couldn't
it,
locate the sound, and I was looking for someone with a ponytail.
well, and after you explained, like, why you had such a hard time finding her, I was like, well, that makes perfect sense. Like, I personally think I just got lucky, and I just went to the first one, and that just happened to be her.
I heard coughing, and I looked around. I couldn't locate it.
Yeah.
I just walked around until the indicator popped up. So it was just like, okay, there she is. And then they showed her. She's like, oh my god.
Yeah, I mean, she was the first one on the left. So, like, I when I seen all these people, I was just like, okay, well, I'm just going to go one by one. And that just happened to be the first one that I walked up to.
But this is also why I would say, like, anybody that wants to complain about, like, her physicality or size in the game, this is where I'm saying they use it as a story point. Like, they make her look so different than what she looked like throughout the game, and you can tell she's beaten down and fucked up, just like Ellie. Ellie continues to get more gaunt as the game goes on and loses weight throughout the game too, just because I think she's just mentally fucked.
She's eventually down.
But you can see the difference in Ellie at the end of the game versus the beginning of the game. I mean, she's still, like, she's always like a slim girl or skinny girl, but she gets, like, pretty fucking skinny, man. And
it's almost anorexic by the time she gets to see Barbara.
Yep, she gets fucked up. And then you have these two people that are fucking lost everything, and you get into, like, this epic fucking fist fight in the water because Ellie is gone so far she's willing to kill a fucking unconscious kid.
With that whole thing, I mean, when you first find her, the first words out of Abby's mouth are, "It's you."
Yeah.
It's just like, oh, fuck, they're not gonna make me fight this girl. And then then she sits there, there's boats this way, follow me.
And
so
I mean, for me, I was more, okay, so at that point in time when I found her and she was all fucked up, I was at that point where it's like, it's over, man. Just get to the boats and get out of there. Let it go, because I've had enough playtime as Abby to know you guys are the same fucking person. There's no point in killing each other because you're not going to accomplish anything. And we get to the boats, and I think Ellie looks at, like, the blood on her hands, and it just flashes back again to Joel, and she just can't let it go. And then you get into just some brutal fucking fist fight.
He's like, you are going to fight me. And Abby's like, he had nothing to do with this. And Ellie is just like, you made him part of this.
Yeah.
And then that fight scene, oh my god.
That fight scene was so ridiculously good.
It was so brutal. And, like, just the expressions that when they get to the point where she's drowning Abby, and, like, that's, I think, the picture, the thumbnail for this video. Her face is just, like, angry, sad, and fucked up completely. Bloody as shit.
And she's like, take him and get out of here. Go. I never want to see you again. And she's sitting there crying, and she's got 2 fingers bitten off of her hand. It's just like, oh God, please let this be the end. And they say, no, we're not done yet. And it's,
And then you go back to one of the more sad fucking endings, I think. But also, like, it kind of closes things out symbolically. You go back to the home, the farm, with Ellie, and Gina's gone. She said she would leave, so she's gone. And I like the fact that that actually happened, and she goes back to nothing. She left everything to get nothing, gained nothing, and came back with less. And you go back, and everything's empty except for the room that she had all her shit in.
yeah.
And this is that point in time, I think, where, like, you're to make the connection. She can no longer play the guitar because she doesn't have enough fingers to. So she tries to play the song that Joel played at the beginning, but she can't do it. And I think that's, like, the symbolic, unable to, like, she's Joel and her now is at that point where it's that there's the separation, because that link that was the guitar throughout the game can no longer be played. So she leaves it behind and walks out into the fucking wilderness, and that's the end of the game.
You know, but I think, like, that whole the whole scene where Gina tells her, if you leave, I'm leaving, you know, and then she actually leaves. That, for me, that opens up the option for a third game, just simply because you could go on with both Abby and Lev and Ellie's story, because, like, Ellie obviously can't go back to Jackson because that's where Gina and the baby are. So where's she gonna go?
Well, I feel like there's enough of a third, seeds planted for a third story. I actually think it needs a third one. I mean, I might be in the minority because this one is so bleak in its outcome. The first one had its moments of bleakness, but, like, it didn't end completely bleak. This game ended pretty fucking bleak, and I do feel like with the fact that Abby and Lev were going to the Fireflies, and they have the information that Ellie's still alive, what would change their objective?
Right.
You know what I mean? Like, now they have the information that she's still alive, she's still immune. We know where she is or where around she was. Let's focus on that, and you can kind of build the game from there. I think there's enough to go through, and I actually think I personally think they should do a third one. If they were going to do a second one, they should do a third one. But that's just me.
I mean, I agree with you because, like, I mean, based on, I know you and I were talking that one night, and we were saying how, like, they could have Abby be hunting Ellie, but Ellie is also trying to find the Fireflies because she has no purpose anymore. So she just wants
accepted that fate.
Right, like, she basically wants to donate herself, and then they run into each other, and then have those two actually, like, fight together in order to get Ellie to the Fireflies.
Yeah, I mean, that's an idea, but there's enough out there to kind of make a third game, is all I'm saying. But we recapped the whole game, and I'm curious to ask, like, what you guys thought of this game as a whole. So I'll start with you, Gina. A review out of 10. We talked enough about it to kind of give our point of views.
Yes, I know, like I said, I gave the first game, like, an 8. Well, it was like an 8.75 to a 9. This game, I think I would probably go... I really enjoyed the game. Like, I did. I thoroughly enjoyed the game. So I would probably go, like, an 8.5 to an 8.75. It was just a little bit under the first one for me. The storyline wasn't quite as impactful as the first one, if that makes sense.
I can see that, and I do agree with it. Heather, what do you think?
I definitely give this game a solid 8. I mean,
so you're saying it's on par with the first one because you gave 8 to the first one too, right?
It is, I mean, because the first one for me, the story drug on a little bit towards the middle and then just skyrocketed at the end. This one did the exact same thing. And also, the gameplay in itself, crafting things was made easier. And the fact that you could upgrade things so that they were made faster, where you couldn't do that in the first game made that better with the gameplay, but also with the aiming system and all of that within this game, it was done a lot better than with the first game, in my opinion.
Yeah,
With the story ending the way it did, it kept it at an 8 instead of making it an 8.5 or a 9 for me, because you have the ending with the flashback of Joel and Ellie.
Oh, we didn't even talk about that.
Yeah, the flashback of Joel and Ellie standing out on the porch after the dance. And Ellie sits there and says, "You should have let me die in that operating room, otherwise, because my life would have meant something then." And I feel like she still feels like, up to now, that her life still doesn't mean anything.
Yeah.
This way I look at it has like the middle of a trilogy, because there's still unanswered questions and there's still a place for the game to go. But that was I can't believe we didn't talk about it, because that for me was one of the better cutscenes in the game. And there's the last scene that we get with Joel in it, and the last scene we'll probably ever see with him in it, where they kind of explain how that conversation they show that conversation, how it would have gone if he just told her. So I mean, it's a great cutscene, and it's just like after how intense the fucking game and the game is, it's just like, oh man, I need a fucking breather.
What was best about that cutscene too is how it ended, because it ended with Ellie saying, "I don't know if I can ever forgive you, but I want to try." And then knowing that was the very last thing that she said to Joel, I think that had a lot to do with why her vengeance was so deep.
Yeah.
Because it was taken away from her. Like that time of like being able to forgive Joel was taken away from her too soon.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. And I mean, it explains, like you said, it explains the biggest reason why she was the vendetta was so huge. But yeah, I mean, I probably, like, what did I give the first game? 9.5 or 9 or something?
Yes.
9.5. Me personally fall below, this game falls below the first game. And I think it's just because a lot of the gameplay, aspects of gameplay are recycled. They're built upon, but they don't reinvent the wheel or even try to for a lot of the things, and they do kind of rely on the same tropes, especially with like building a scene where, you know, you go from killing a lot of guys to going through like a small corridor to the next area, and they kind of redo that a lot. And I do at times agree to an extent with Bobbit saying the game is a bit too long. I think there's certain things that could have been cut away, and there's certain characters that I have reasons for not liking, that I'll get into, but I give the game probably like an 8.8 or 8.7 out of 10. It's still a really good game, and you can't deny how good it is because you want to hate it, and a lot of people seem to do that. But I have some talking points I'd like to go through. I know this review is like 17 hours long, but the game is there's so much. And it's really rich with its storytelling and world building that it's hard not to like spend time. I mean, I spent 25, 26, 27 hours playing this game. How can I not spend a couple hours talking about it afterwards?
Right.
But I'll just go through a couple things. I had talked basically for what kind of worked with the game and what didn't work. And if you guys have other points, just let me know. But one of the things that I thought was kind of like a miss, and I wish it had a bit more, was the relationship between Gina and Ellie, because they really rely on that at the end scene in the farm, and we never really get what we should get to be invested in that relationship. So her leaving Gina doesn't feel as impactful as I think they wanted it to.
Well, and I
like
think
the cutscene they're showing right now, they should have shown when Ellie and Gina were found Gene's stash of weed.
You know why they didn't do this cutscene that we're looking at right now is the same cutscene that they put out in the trailer. So they assumed most people that played the game have already seen it. But it's stupid to have like I mean it's not stupid, but it's a weird creative choice to have this not be a lot earlier, considering they allude to it when they're smoking weed.
Not only that, they allude to it as soon as Ellie meets up with Jesse.
Yeah, well, they expect the gaming community to have seen it already, but anybody that doesn't watch the trailers isn't going to see it.
Exactly. Right. The only trailer I saw for the game was a scene that they didn't even have in the game.
Yeah, well, they did that a lot too.
Ellie sits there and says, "This time it's going to be different. This time I'm going to kill them all."
See, and they purposely put Joel in positions he wasn't in the game.
Yep.
But in my mind, that was a bad marketing campaign, because you don't want to do the bait and switch with a lovable character.
No.
But I just feel sorry, Gina. Go ahead, because
I was just gonna say I also feel like I feel the same way, because we were talking about it earlier. Like, this could have been solved so much by they had so many of these scenes where they were kind of like throwaway scenes where you're just making your way through something in order to get to another place, and they could have had more voiceover time and storyline time there, just like Gina and Ellie talking and like showing that it's leading up to the point where they are falling in love with each other. Because like I said before, it was almost like they kissed.
It's almost like they were wrote to be a romantic couple, but not wrote properly. It wasn't written properly.
Right. But yeah, you go from them kissing to all of a sudden, okay, Ellie's gonna be Dina's baby mama.
Yeah. It's just, they kind of did not develop that relationship enough for us to care. That to me was a negative for the game. I mean, one thing that's positive in the game, the game. It does do what a lot of things have done and tried to be like, it's a women-led storyline and it's women empowerment and shit like that. But it doesn't do it as stupid as so many movies has done it. They don't just to create like a strong woman character. They don't have to make the men weak, because the men that are in the storyline are never really portrayed as weak or worse than the women. It's just you can make a strong female character without having to belittle men to do so.
Well, we see this so often in the game with when it comes to both Ellie and Abby having to fight Helga and her twin brother. They're fighting these monstrous men.
And not only that, the part where Ellie's lifting Jesse up over the ledge to get onto the roadway.
Yeah.
To start their track to the aquarium, or Abby lifting Owen in the aquarium.
But it also doesn't do like that the Hollywood thing of being like, I'm this.
I don't need you because I'm a powerful female.
Ghostbusters, for instance, fucking. It's an all-female cast, but not only is all-female cast, the men that they have in it, they turn into like parodies of human beings.
Yeah.
And that's what I liked about this, because you can have strong female characters, but first of all, they have to be strong characters. Doesn't matter if they're men or women. If you can build a strong character, you can slap a different gender on them if you want, as long as it works within the confines of that character.
Right.
But that was a positive, and I mean, why it's such a big positive for me is because you don't see it anywhere else. And they don't go over the top to highlight that you're playing as a woman or something like that. So it's kind of subtle, but it's nice.
Or that you're playing as a lesbian, or that you're playing as, a fucking woman that's protecting a transsexual. They're just people in this game.
Yeah, they do it pretty. But there is the one, and this is the one thing I will point out is the character of Lev. I'm not a huge fan of. Because this to me, like, I find that character is the most shoehorned of all the characters in the game. Just to hit the specific talking points that are popular, Lev's character doesn't make a lot of sense to me. Because you look at the scars and they're like, oh, okay, she shaved her head and she acts like a man. We must kill her. Yet they have men. It doesn't seem like men and women are treated differently at all in their culture. They've got men and women out on patrol. They got men and women, big axe wielding people. So it
Right,
seems like this is the very specific point that they can't get
but
beyond.
you also have to remember that the Seraphites are a religious group, that
Yes.
they look up to this woman
But they're
as
also
if
of a
she's
religion
Jesus.
of their own making. So
Right.
it's not necessarily
Well,
like
some
old
can argue,
beliefs.
yeah, but some can argue that certain types of Christianity is as well. So they look to this woman as if she is their god, and it depends on what their belief system is within that religion. Like if transsexuality is a no in their religion, then that's going to explain a
But
huge amount as to why they are so against Lev.
it would be
Not only that,
great to
if
see it
if you look at all the
a bit
women,
more.
they all have the same hairstyle. They have the French braid going around their head, like
So
leader of this group, the woman that they were worshiping.
I would at
So
least love to have
for Lev,
seen.
I know, but for Lev to have shaved her head to be more like the men who had no hair, it's him spitting in the face of their creed.
right.
I mean, they do allude to it. I think I just needed a bit more. And this goes for the Seraphites as a whole. I wish I just
Yeah.
needed a bit more. It's like the glimpse we got of them, you can surmise certain things. But especially with this specific point, because I know it's a point of contention for a lot of people that don't like that shit or don't like it at all, at least give us enough meat and potatoes to kind of like connect the dots. You
Well,
can connect a dot, but the dots, it's not strong enough for a story point to be built off of it without it being looked as a bit cheap.
You know what the best thing that they could have done in order to fix that situation would have been to actually just go to a short cutscene where Lev has to kill his mom. And I know that they kind of showed a little bit of it, but they didn't fully go.
I mean, showing that
as to
scene,
why his
especially
mom
like,
was so against him.
I think that would have, and it's not even a hard fix for me. It's like real quick to kind of give us a bit more. But you know, it's not
Right,
like
just
the negative.
mom, like you're a disgrace or something
Or
like
like
that,
saying
you know, to
kind of
explain.
exploring why they're so against it outside of just it felt more like a real life talking point than it felt like a game talking point. That's my problem with the character, and it also had to do. Sorry, go ahead.
Another way they could fix it is they could sit there and do like they did with the first one and give us, when they remastered it, they gave us Left Behind. They could do something like this with something that you play as Lev up to the point that he kills his mom.
Yeah, a DLC would help. The other thing, I guess, with Lev, it's also like the same point I kind of had with Ellie and Dina is kind of the same point I have with Lev and Abby. They try to make parallels between Joel and Ellie from the first game with Abby and Lev, but they just never feel like they feel like a really odd couple, like a weird pairing, and I don't. There is a reason she cares, but the reason doesn't seem strong enough.
No, it doesn't. She explains it as, I came back because I needed to clear my conscience, but it's not enough.
It's
You
not.
Honestly, I
feel
think
guilt, but you know what? You saved their lives to begin with, so why are you still feeling guilty?
I honestly think that a lot, for me anyway, what I took from it was she felt guilty at first, so she went back to clear her conscience. But then after hearing what Owen did, and hearing that Owen saved the old man Seraphite's life, and all of that, it kind of pushes her to change her way of thinking and to become more humanized instead of militarized.
But the thing is, I find that is Owen's point of view, which is why it doesn't feel as strong when she adapts it. I don't like. I mean, it's just you just accept them being a pairing, and I mean, I wouldn't have too much of a problem with it if like the ending kind of seemed like they didn't give enough credence to why she was like, don't kill him, don't hurt him, and then they go off into the sunset together. It's like,
Honestly,
yeah,
sorry, go ahead. Honestly, I think that like by losing Owen, like Owen was the love of her life. That was pretty much established in the game, and by losing him, I think that she feels, and that they didn't. This is just what I got off of it. They didn't like portray this in the game or anything like that, but I think that she feels like she um, lost her opportunity to ever really become a mother or to have somebody to take care of, and so like then Lev steps in and kind of becomes that child that she has to take care of.
she had nothing, right? She had to form a bond with what
Right.
she had,
So Lev
and
is
so
like
did Lev.
her.
Lev had nothing either.
Right. So like Lev is like her. Um, he's
Also,
her new
Lev
family.
Lev literally saved her life, so it's there, but it just like I felt like more could have been put into it. Basically, it's not like none of these things are huge negatives. It's just our thoughts on the game. As far as it goes, how do you guys feel about like the jumbled up storytelling that they did in the game? And when I say jumbled up, I mean they go back and forth and back and forth and back and forth. Do you think it's to the aid, or do you think like it didn't need to be as jumbled up?
I think it was to aid it because really, if you had done it in chronological order of things, it wouldn't have been as good.
And not only that, but it would have been more jumbled up if you think about it. Because if you would have, okay, so you're playing as both Abby and Ellie. If you would have gone back and forth, then one day you would, or one time you would have been playing as Ellie, and then the next time you would have been playing as Abby, and the storyline would have gotten just completely lost.
I mean, there's part of me that would have kind of been on board with at the beginning of the game if Abby kills Tommy instead of Joel, mistaking one for the other, because they traveled together and they both signed the same books. And they like I don't know if that would work with the first game and them kind of visually seeing him. But those people died anyway. And then getting to a point
Also
where
would
Abby
work
kills
because-
Joel, and it would mean a bit more because you had the playing time with Joel. But these are kind of like, yeah, would it be better if it was done a little bit different? Who knows? Because it's never going to be explored.
Right.
But however, with that scene where Abby actually is saved by Tommy and Joel, it wouldn't have worked. Do it
I
that
mean,
way because
none of the game
Tommy-
would work if it went that way, like as it's done, because then you lose the scene with Tommy at the farm too, which is
Yeah.
really powerful. Fucking, and I don't know how people can review bomb it when you see graphically and the performances by everybody in the game are so fucking good that like I don't. You can not like the storyline, but that part you can't deny.
Well, here's the thing. I think society as a whole needs to stop being a bunch of baby back bitches. Because honestly, just because there's not something like there's a couple of things that you don't like in a game does not mean that you have the right to go and bomb the game completely, or the fact that you have the right to attack the actress that plays a character in the game. Like that's just.
But I also don't consider
That's
this to
fine.
be on the same level as other things that were attacked. I mean, people attacked Captain Marvel, they attacked Ghostbusters and stuff like that. Some of those things I see credence because the overall product isn't great, and because you're shoehorning in something that doesn't need to happen, and you kind of rely on the agenda of it. That I can get, but this game does not do that. And the points that it like slightly does it, if you can't overlook that, then you do have a problem.
you need to be put in your own little plastic bubble and just be shoved away from society.
Exactly, and honestly, the sad part is like there's a lot of people out there that are like that today, and you can have your own opinion. You don't have to like the game. You don't have to like a certain movie or anything like that. But you don't start coming out and just completely shitting on it without looking at what they did right. I'm sorry.
Well, I mean, they reject what's right.
The people behind this game took 6 years out of their lives to make this masterpiece. And that's exactly what this is. This is a masterpiece of video game technology with the graphics, the gameplay, the storytelling, everything. The writing, the way they fucking nailed human emotions on the faces. The actions of the baby when he sees himself in the mirror. I have a
Yep.
baby. She does exactly the same fucking thing.
Yep. Exactly.
It's you kind of like for a couple talking points you fucking bury the whole thing, and it's really stupid. For me as an avid game player, to completely attack something because you don't agree with one thing or the other, what you're actively saying is you don't want games like this to this level. I mean, if you're
Right.
gonna go ahead and refuse to buy something or bomb it because it has a muscular woman in it or it has a gay woman in it, because at some point in time you have to ask that question: is that the reason? Because there's too much else going on in this game for that to be even a fucking talking point. Like to a point where you're gonna fucking negative the score by 8 to give it a 1. I mean,
Well,
those type of people need to
yes.
stop.
And I think that like people are so easily angered these days, and they neglect to realize that their opinion is exactly that. It's their opinion. It's not the mass majority's opinion. But unfortunately, sometimes it does become the mass majority's opinion, because if you have somebody that's of influence that, shits on anything, whether it's this game or whatever, then the mass public will do the exact same thing. But I implore people that do that to stop going and following other people and start actually looking into your own opinions and look at the actual game as a
Play the
whole.
game for fuck's sakes, at least.
Yeah, and if you find yourself getting to that point where you're so angry that you just want to go on Twitter and just fucking shit all over the product, go for a fucking walk.
I mean, the other thing too is
If you don't want to spend the money on the game as a brand new game, wait a little while, get PlayStation Plus. Guess what? It'll probably end up free for that month.
Exactly.
but also here's the thing: play the game, watch the movie, watch the show. If you don't like it, you don't like it. That's fine, right? I mean, and you could have the same points that I've had or you guys have had when I pinpoint things like Lev or things like that, where I feel like there's a couple times, very few in this times in this game where they get a bit heavy-handed with shit, but for the most part they handle it delicate as fuck, and it's not a huge part of the game. This is what people are kind of asking for when they want to see a strong female lead, or you want to see a game that kind of tackles or has gay characters, transsexual characters. This to me is what I want to see, but I don't want to see a character that's whole character is being gay or being transsexual. They're not a character anymore. All they are is a stereotype, and all they are is an agenda-driven fucking point of view. This game does not do that. I mean, if you see that, that's because you're too focused on it. First of all,
Exactly.
take a step back and look at things. Now, I will also say that there's a big problem with user reviews and critic reviews. Critically, this game is must play 9,000 out of 10 critically, and I feel like you still have to have some criticism. The game is not great at everything it does. It's great at most of what it does, but some of the gameplay mechanics and things like that can get repetitive.
Mm-hmm.
Yep. Well, and that's the thing.
Honestly, sorry, Gina.
No.
Honestly, I feel that people that complain about this game are perfectly happy with 2K games, where they get the same fucking game every year.
Well, the thing is, there's a huge how can I say this? Having an opinion is incredibly important. Like, everybody's entitled to their own opinion. I think that so many people with social media and all of that, like, so many people are so eager to get their opinions out there. Like, we're doing it right now. But when you have an incredibly negative opinion that's focused on all of the negative, and to the point where you can't see the positives, then I have to ask why like, why are you playing the game? Why are you watching the movie? Why are
Well,
you
I mean, the
doing
thing is, most
any
people didn't play the game. They just hated it originally. I mean, if I'm going to review anything, whether it's wrestling, gaming, movies, TV shows, I always have to. I will sit down and watch it, and then I feel comfortable reviewing it. If you don't want to experience it and you just want to be like, oh, yeah, this fucking shit is garbage because I want the views for being the first review on YouTube, you're not a review if you haven't played the game. All you did was read the fucking. And this is the next point. Do you think how badly do you think the leak hurt the game? Because this game,
it hurt
what
it.
it wasn't like the gameplay or anything wasn't leaked, but the story points were leaked. But they were also leaked in a way to build rage.
I honestly think that that's why it hurt it, because the points that were leaked were the points where, like,
Joel gets killed by a character you guys don't know. And
right,
it's like, oh, fuck
Joel
that.
gets killed. They focused on the fact that, you know, Ellie is lesbian, and then they focused on, you know, Lev being a transsexual. They focused on all of the bad points. So when people were seeing that, they're like, fuck this game, especially with Joel.
Yeah. It definitely.
I don't get that though. I really don't get like hating something because your favorite character dies. It's in the same conversation as hating a match because your wrestler that you like the most doesn't win.
Yeah.
Well, they had the same problem
That's
with Harry
today's
Potter.
society, basement.
Oh,
Mm-hmm.
when it leaked out that it was the same problem with Harry Potter when it was leaked out that he dies in the end, but does he really die?
Right. I mean,
They're shitting all over it, but then they sit there and read the book or watch the movie, and it's just like, oh, but I thought he died.
I mean, in this game, Joel's death had to happen. It was inevitable. How they did it and when they did it, that's debatable because that's, again, if you play the game, I might say I want more time with Joel and Ellie just to rekindle what I remember from the first one, just because I hadn't played the first one recently. But there's a point for that, but there's also a point. It just didn't happen. At some point in time, just accept. You have to accept the storyline because certain things need to happen for a storyline to grow. Whether they happen now or an hour from now doesn't really matter too much in the end.
I mean, honestly, if Joel didn't die at some point in this game, this story would not have made any sense.
exactly.
Well, you'd have to change the game entirely. And then when somebody gets to the point where they're like, when somebody's like, well, I wouldn't have killed Joel, I would have just rewritten the whole game. I can guarantee you it probably would suck. Because first of all, you're not a writer, most likely not a writer, not a game developer. You don't know nothing of the industry except from what you like and dislike and people feed it to you. So, you know, calm down a bit and realize it's not like the story's terrible.
No, it was a phenomenal story in my
It was
opinion.
a phenomenal fucking story. But here's the other thing too. Do you honestly think that this was the only option that the writers went through? Like, as a writer, you go through and you have an idea for a story, but you go through and you develop different ways for certain things to happen, or different things that happen in a script. And this was probably the best way that they found to carry on with the game.
But they also wanted to show you that, and you know, stay loyal to the brand of The Last of Us, that it doesn't end, there's no happy endings. I mean, it doesn't end with Ellie being fucking killed, but there's no happy endings. Just like, for the most part, they tries to be as real world as possible in showing things while still maintaining the fact that it's a game. If you're gonna play the game and be like, well, I can't, you know what, it just ended on a note that was a bit more lighthearted. What the fuck?
Well,
You're playing a game murdering people 99% of the time. In what way is that gonna end lighthearted?
Well, and the whole concept of The Last of Us is based on, what do you think would actually happen if society was in the same situation? It would be a you versus me attitude. Yeah, you might get a couple of your civilizations like we see in the game, but for the majority of the time, it's going to be either you or me. type attitude. So if you have a real life person that's the character of Joel, sooner or later, chances are they're gonna die.
Yeah,
That's
and
just
the
the
problem
way
is,
life works.
perspective wise, Joel. We all love Joel, but I mean, you flip that perspective on Joel, and he is a fucking monster. And it's like I guess there's certain people that are willing to look at a game from different perspectives, especially when they show you a different perspective. But there's other people that are just like, oh, this is not. I didn't sign up for this. I signed up for The Last of Us Part One, just on replay. It's like, man,
But
things are gonna change. Shut the fuck up and
here's
deal with it. Or you want Joel and Ellie to go on a mission? Like I said before, play the first one.
exactly, and like the parallel between Abby and Joel at the end makes perfect sense because for what happened in the story. Because like Joel was a fucking monster before meeting even a little bit after meeting Ellie. He was a fucking monster, but Ellie changed him. And Abby was the exact same way. She was a fucking machine until she meets Lev, and Lev changes her.
And she smuggles Lev out of the fucking, just like Joel smuggled Ellie. The
Exactly.
game. These are the points that I think people don't like. Good storytelling draws lines and parallels between several things. The game has to do it a bit more, a bit more. I'm gonna say heavy-handed, but they have to be bit more blunt with the storytelling in order for it to get across. Because the game, like the demographics of gaming, is But like I mean, there's certain stories that I've either read or watched that are not as, I guess, obvious with how they draw parallels. And this game doesn't like spell it out for you. It's pretty good with it, but it's like if a story is doing that, then it's doing its job. And I don't get I personally don't get the hate for the game.
Me either.
I can't understand it on a level where it doesn't just seem like hate for hate's sake. Because people are like too close-minded to actually. It sounds like people that have never read a book or read a decent story or watched a decent story are like, well, Joe died, do me like me hate. It's like fucking holy shit, man. Fucking Stone Age motherfucker. Yeah, oh, it has gay people me hate. Oh, strong woman me hate.
You know what? I have to say that it says a lot about the game, the fact that the spoilers were released and the game still sold so many fucking copies.
Yeah.
Like, what is it? It's like the #1 selling game in how many years?
I mean, I think like with gaming, it's also like how quick and how much does it sell immediately, but how much does that hold on? I like the thing that kills me is I look on YouTube and like most of the fucking things you see on YouTube are like, this game is awful. I hate this game. Or the way that they did The Last of Us wrong. And I'm like, man, did we play the same fucking game? Did we play the same game? Because it doesn't seem like it.
No, and to continue on with Gina's point about writing, I mean, I have a book that's published. I fucking sat there and got halfway through that book 4 times and threw it away and started again.
Exactly. That's what any good writer does. Like, once you find a spot where, like, the storyline just doesn't make sense, but it just didn't make sense.
Well, I mean, I feel like they settled on the fact that if we kill him off early, I mean, Joel dying is the same as Joel's daughter dying. It's the same. They do. This game it retreads the first game a lot in its story beats.
Ooh. I'm sorry, but I'm seeing something on my screen right now that made me think of another parallel between the first game and the last game. That farmhouse window where she leaves the guitar when she leaves the farmhouse for the last time. The guitar's not in it, but that window is the very same window that is the screen that comes on when you start playing the original Last of Us.
With her knife in the windowsill or whatever.
Right.
I mean, the game. I don't understand how you can't just appreciate when something is good without being clouded by anger and hate. And I mean, there's things that I hate, and I hate agenda-driven media. because you see it all the time. You see the cheap shots at, we're gonna turn this into this, and we're gonna shoehorn in a character that's transsexual but loves fucking dolphins because holy shit, why not? But this game kind of handles everything from a realistic point of view. All of its characters are built to be real feeling characters, and they do their best to flesh out those characters. So I mean, I don't know. In the end, I don't get the hate. I thoroughly enjoyed the game. Right now it's my game of the year. We'll see if that holds up until the end of the year. I still haven't played FF7. I still haven't played Ghost of Tsushima or Cyberpunk. I think is coming out this year too. So there's a couple contenders.
Yeah, Ashton wants that one.
Yeah, there's a couple contenders out there. But as far as storylines go and as far as complexity goes, you can shit on something all you want, but you also, for the most part, aren't willing to accept it from the get-go.
Yeah.
I will say this, as somebody who has played the FF7 remake and this, I prefer this over FF7.
I mean, in all honesty, because it's a remake, first of all, it's not, for me, it's not even a contention. But I'm interested to see how it plays out. But this game, I will describe it as a masterpiece, just like I described the first one. I think it's a faithful second in the line. If they stop here, they stop here. If they don't have to. I don't think they will, because Naughty Dog doesn't really have anything else in the works unless they're going to create a completely different IP. You got the Uncharted series done.
Actually,
I don't think they do it anymore. I think it's moved to a different production studio. Like the next Crash Bandicoot, I don't think it's made by Naughty Dog. But I might be wrong on that. I just remember hearing it somewhere. But again, they've moved on to like they're like the HBO of game developers, where everything has to be, to a certain level. I thought it was great. I don't have a lot more to say about the game that we haven't already talked on. I don't know if you guys have any points you want to go through, or.
I think we hit everything pretty much on the nail for me.
Mm-hmm.
Yep. I mean, we'll call it here. I'll probably be streaming the remake sometime next week to start for Final Fantasy VII Remake, and hopefully we can do some other stuff on the channel. I know I'm hopefully getting back into Donkey Kong Country with OK Fabe, but I want to thank everybody for hanging out, you two especially, and I love the fact that you guys like played the game while I was playing it, so we could just talk about it.
Yes, we have to talk about our feelings.
Feelings. Toys for Bob is make crash for. Okay, so thanks to everybody in the chat who was in the chat: Bobbit, Trick, Alex, QC, Darkness, a couple people out there. I hope you guys enjoyed the review. It's long as fuck, but you know what? I mean, come on, how do you review this game in 10 minutes?
Actually, you have to.
But yeah, we're gonna call it here. Have a good night, and I will talk to everybody next time we stream.
Wear a condom.
Wear a condom and fuck yourself. How do I
Wear a face
stop
mask.
this? Like, I forgot.